Hey everyone, what's up? I'm Yosarian from HLTV.org and this is HLTV Confirmed, now live from the HLTV headquarters in Denmark. We used to do a 30-minute long VOD that was then aired live and then put on YouTube, but we thought, hey, why not make it a real live show so we can have interaction? Guys, I see you already in the chat. It's really great. A lot of people already spamming some of the emotes we got. I see some of the old classic HLTV memes already. We'll eventually try and turn those into something useful. So to talk a little bit about what's going on in this show, we'll have discussions, analysis about CSGO scene, the news that come up, especially ones that we have ourselves. We're going to give you some insight as to how HLTV.org works. We'll have some behind the scenes stories, anecdotes from events. And I'm not alone in this, obviously. Luckily, I have some pretty staunch soldiers by my side. So let's see who else is on here. So first of all, we have Striker and Professor, both staff writers, senior writers, sorry, actually, as you can see on your screen right there at HLTV.org. Proud people who go out and represent our org and write about what everyone loves about CS. And also, as you might see on your on our right here, this is of course Sponge eating, drinking, and yes, he is dressed like a character from another game that shall not be mentioned here. Chad, wanna talk to us about what's going on there?
Yeah, look, I was just sampling a delicious butter chicken from down the road, but more importantly, I was at Gamescom today, and I was talked into wearing Diva face paint, and I think I look beautiful. I don't know about what everyone else at home thinks, but I think I look amazing.
I think you're upping your game a little bit. Maybe you should like consider doing that for events too. We'll test it out here, see what people think. You can go to the chat, tell me what you think about Chad's face paint. I know you also have something on elsewhere on your body, but we're not going to be showing. Luckily, your box is pretty small, so it's only showing your torso. Guys, thanks so much for being on the panel with me. We're going to obviously be talking about some of the recent news, the news that we do have from around the CS:GO world in this player break. Prof, let's start with you. I mean, I know it's the break, so are you getting those? You're missing CS? Ready to watch something?
Kinda, yeah. I think I've been pretty busy with doing other work related to CS, so not that much. But yeah, of course, missing a bit of that live action and the top tier CS, live CS, and big events.
You Striker, you getting you feeling it yet? The withdrawals from CS?
I'm getting there just because, but I mean, we've had some CS going on already. It's been mostly qualifiers and relatively low tier CS, so I'm definitely looking forward to Stockholm, where I'm actually going to be going in about a week.
Sponge, you as well, right? Going to Stockholm. I know, it's just so we're not just talking about your appearance and your culinary, so to speak, preferences. What about you? I mean, what's it been like for you with 3 weeks without, well, sort of CS?
So I had I am Shanghai, so that was cool. Then I got to commentate that, which was a bit of different fun from like an analytical perspective. But other than that, I have I suppose been going around the twist. I've been extremely bored, like I imagine everybody at home is, because you forget how much Counter-Strike is normally going on that you want to watch. So I'm keen to get stuck back in for Stockholm, and I think there's some interesting storylines coming out the break with all those roster changes that keep happening, right?
Oh, there are plenty of them. We're gonna be going over some of them and also talking about the break actually and the events we have just coming after them. I wanna just reiterate, as you can see in the Twitch chat right now, we actually have already custom emotes. They were done today. HLTV Confirm is like a stamp emote. You spam that when something is laid out and confirmed. I think we also have some other ones that will be coming up. But please use the chat to ask us questions and talk to us about the content that we're putting out. Anything you want to add to the discussion. Please feel free to use it. Let's get into it. The first thing we're going to be talking about is actually a lot about you, Striker, because what a lot of people were asking me when we did the non-live version of the show was how do you guys pick your EVPs, your MVPs? How does it actually work when HLTV.org goes out of its way to say, okay, so this was the best player at the event. Obviously, it's something that's always being discussed a lot whenever we do it, especially if it's a close race. And I know you prep it a lot. It's not just It's not just someone sitting down, just watching a game or two, and then deciding, okay, this guy, I guess device was pretty good this time around. We'll give it to him again, or simple. Um, Even though he is going to be featured in this segment. So Striker, can you tell us a little bit about what actually goes on when you and Peter are choosing the MVPs?
Yeah, I've only started helping out Peter a couple of months ago, but I've already gotten a very good idea of how the process works, how we pick our MVP, especially, but also the EVPs, the second tier, the exceptionally valuable players. Below that, those are the awards that we always put up after big events and present them there. But I mean, it's a long and quite a tedious process, the whole thing, just because we both watch basically all the matches, or we kind of switch around depending on whether there are two matches at a time. There's two streams going on at the same time. So we're just like with Peter, we're basically just switching between the streams depending on who wants to take what, etc. But I mean, it starts with kind of actually watching the matches. That's the most important thing, kind of the eye test, or one of the most important things, the eye test, and just watching the matches, seeing with our own eyes how each player performs. And of course, with that, we're trying to track especially impact. So that means multi-kills and opening kills, and as well as clutches. And that's the main part we track. And we kind of watch the match and put down notes that you're going to be able to see on the screen for every match of every big event that we do the MVP and EVPs for. You can actually see it on the screen now what this sheet kind of looks when we're done with a match. When we're done kind of looking at the match, this is like a basic sheet of each player's impact on the server. And this is from ESL1 Cologne, from the match between Navi and ENCE, which was the last match of the group stage in the lower bracket, basically for a spot in the quarterfinals. And Navi won this is the second map, Mirage. Navi won the second map, 16-14. And here you can kind of see what I'm talking about, tracking the impact. You can look at Simple and you can kind of tell that he was one of the most impactful player on the server. He had a couple of 1v2s, quite a lot of multi-kills, something like 10 if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, as an example, we also track kind of the kills that matter less or just are easier to get, such as the eco multi-kills. You can see that in the gray, basically the gray multi-kills are the eco multi-kills. You can see that here. And the red ones are those that they got in a round that they lost, while the green ones are the ones that they got in a round win. So just scrolling through Simple, you can see that he got 2, 4, 6, 7 multi-kills in the rounds that he won, plus the double in an anti-eco. And that's what our notes kind of look like after a match. And then we kind of look at the final stat sheet, which I'm going to show now. And there we kind of look at how our eye test and how the generic stats that we can use it or we can see in Scorebot, and after the match, how those pair against the detail stats that I have here. You can kind of tell what most of these stats mean. You can see the basic stuff like kills per round, assists per round, deaths per round, ADR, KST. A lot of people will be able to recognize most of these things. But there are also some that you might not be able to recognize unless you see some of Peter's tweets, where he often includes some extra statistics. I mean, especially impact rating. That's something that most people will probably be relatively familiar with, but it is quite important in kind of determining who the most impactful player is, just because it kind of derives from multi-kills, opening kills, and clutches. And then we also have like some additional stats like the round win shares, which are here, and round loss shares, which is a bit of a complicated statistic, but basically from the most basic point of view, it kind of tells us which player was good in the rounds that his team won, and which player was bad in the rounds that his team lost, etc. But yes, this is the thing that we get to next after we watch the match, and after we've kind of had an idea of which player was the most impactful, etc. And then we use these to kind of shape how each player performed. And for that, we use the 3 tiers of awards, basically map awards. First of which being a player of the match, player of the map in this case, which you can see in this example that was simple as I was talking about before. He was quite clearly the player of the map, and even from the stats that you can see here, he was almost hands down the most impactful player, even without remembering the match itself. You can see almost 2.0 impact and over 30 kills, etc.
And it seems like such a massive amount of data. Obviously, we have all that on the site, but like, what's it like going through all that and parsing it and trying to make sense of it all?
I mean, like I said, most of this stuff you're going to be able to recognize, but I'm not the one parsing it. It basically takes maybe like 5 to 10 minutes as to like when we actually get these like detailed stats. On the site, you usually get it within, I don't know, like a minute after the match ends. You actually get like the basic stats. And then we have this sheet, which Peter kind of parses from the data that he has. And I'm able to look at that after the match. But going back to what I was talking about, those 3 tiers of map awards that we use, the second one, first player of the match, the second one being exceptionally valuable player, EVP, which is basically the same thing as the awards that we use for tournaments, but in this case it's only for the single map. And those players are basically those that were the tier below player of the match, basically the players that stood out in some way. Here in this case it was Electronic, also 30 kills, quite a lot of impact, even though he couldn't basically catch up to Simple, who was the player of the match. But you're even from these stats, you can kind of tell that he was also a very important player on the server. And the EVPs, there could be none, there could be multiple for a match. In this case, it was just one, but there could also be 3 or 4, or potentially even 0. And then the third tier, we have the valuable player, which is basically whoever was still good, and he was still contributing positively to his team's success in the map. And that's the third tier. Then the fourth tier is basically no award at all, which means players who are either about as that impacted the match as positively as much as negatively, or more negatively than positively. And that's, those players really don't get anything for the map.
So you're talking about me and my career, Striker?
Well, I mean, I guess
look, that was a joke. You weren't meant to cotton on.
No.
You're meant to be like, nah, you're okay, man.
Look,
you shot some people.
I remember your match against Titan, man. I remember
Everyone
that.
does.
That was it. Yes, because you keep reminding everybody. Yeah. Anyway, going back to my point. I mean, the reason it's important to watch every single match and kind of put down these notes and set these awards for every map is that basically you can't, by the end of the tournament, you're going to see something like 40 maps, especially with the 16-team tournaments. So imagine trying to remember 40 maps and 10 different players, how each of them performed. And then you get to the end of the tournament and you try to determine the MVP or some awards only based on that information. It's just impossible.
I think you can relate on this, maybe, Sponge. Like, if you go and analyze, because you do the eye test as well, and you obviously have the stats to back it up. But what's it like going through like such an intense way of watching CS? I guess if you have to watch every game, every player, and track them all, and then at the end try to make sense of it all, it's got to be. You're not leaving for the bathroom much, are you?
I think what people don't understand about us from an analyst perspective is we're only fed a very similar thing to what they get at home, right? We're watching the same feed as what they have maybe 95% of the time. There's been a couple of events that have offered ESL, for one, are trying to offer more screens, so we can have the mini map up all the time. We can have the main feed, and then if we want, we can have our own feed where we can choose to pick and whoever we want to follow. The thing is, when looking for an MVP in the tournament, we're basing it off of the Counter-Strike that's being shown. And look, everybody knows it's a game of 10 players. There's a lot more going on in the server than what the observer is able to capture. They do their best jobs, they try to show the best that they can, but there's a lot that gets missed. And then we contextualize a lot of that with, oh, well, Simple had a good game, let's look at the stats. Oh, it showed he had a good game. Or if I noticed someone, say like Chris J, for example, having a lot of impact on opening kills, I know the importance on that, but his stats may or may not show that he actually had a good game. It may say, sure, the amount of times I saw him get an entry kill and they converted the round was 100%, but he was like 18 for 20, then like it impacts that. So for overall looking at tournament MVPs, you kind of get a general vibe. Like if someone's playing really well, and the stats obviously that you guys put out there are the best way to depict that. But definitely the eye test, definitely there's a lot more to it. And I think with the system that HLTV.org are using as opposed to the one that we are giving, which is more face value, theirs has more worth, right? There's more depth to theirs. Whether or not it's given the same scope in terms of the environment, because it's more like analytical, it's more like hard numbers, obviously with a little bit of eye test. I think it probably has more backing, but there's always different views to look at MVPs and stuff, right? So it's always a two-edged sword or double-edged sword in that regard.
Striker, when you sit around and watch the matches like this, I imagine you watch it all, right? You'd have to, or else it wouldn't be very precise. But I remember we talked about this is the time where you like break out your cup noodles and you pee in a bottle, right? Because you have to really sit there for hours on end, especially if you go back. And sometimes we do MVPs for tournaments that haven't even that finished a while ago. We have actually a user asking us when's the IEM Shanghai MVP going to come out. What will happen there?
I mean, in terms of I don't know, peeing in a bottle, it's not that bad. It does take quite a long time. Usually, maybe like 10-15 minutes after a match ends, we're able to determine these awards and the points that I'm going to get to later. But we're just trying to get breaks wherever we can. And like I said, with these matches, as it's me and Peter now doing these basically these decisions and then these awards and stuff, we can actually kind of switch around matches if it's not 2 matches at a time. So we can actually get a little bit of a break. We're still going to be able to, or we're going to still try to watch the match, even though we're not basically responsible for the awards for that specific map or for the specific match. But we will be able to get a break and kind of refresh after that. So it's not that bad.
To everyone just tuning in, if you saw Spanish Disc before, yes, he went to Gamescom. Yes, he has some pretty weird makeup on his face. It's an Overwatch thing. Don't ask about it. This is HLTV Confirmed. We're doing it live. Thanks to everyone who tuned in, who's writing in the chat. So once all this is said and done, right? Once you've sat around and you've determined an MVP, usually that's over pretty quickly. Like we get to know it. Professor, can you tell us what happens if you're at an event? Say you were at ESL Cologne actually. So what happened as you were told that it was simple this time?
Yeah, I mean for ESL events, at least nowadays, it's pretty simple. It's a pretty organized way of how they deal with press and players and the post-match interviews. At some events, it can be pretty hectic since you have to find the player, and after the final finishes, then there's the award ceremony, then there's a lot of fans trying to get to the players, get signatures. It gets a bit crazy sometimes, and it depends on your access if you can actually get to the player, if there's an organized press conference or something like that after the game. I mean, for ESL Cologne, it was pretty simple, as ESL just brings all of the players about half an hour or so after the last match finishes. They bring him to the press area, you grab the player, you do an interview, award the MVP, and it's a pretty good, like pretty simple procedure in that regard. Also, we have oftentimes actually players trying to figure out whether they were crowned MVPs for tournaments. I remember our photographer Bercho used to say that Simple was eyeing him or something, right? He was kind of giving him the wink eye. Yeah, I mean, when he walks into the room, he's automatically checking where the MVP award holder is, and if he's gonna approach him. That's, I mean, for Simple, it's pretty expected to get the award almost every time. So it's not much of a guess. It's just like waiting for him to get the award, more something like that. We'll talk more about that in a little while. But that's when the choice is obvious. That's when it's actually pretty. That's at least if Simple knows he's been playing well. But what happens if it's close? I remember I think it was an EPL, it was an ESL Pro League in Dallas. Striker, what happens if it's really close? Like what actually ends up determining the final pick?
I mean, there's a lot of factors, but of course, like you said, we've had this very, very close case in recent memory, which was the ESL Pro League finals in Dallas this year, and there it was so close between Dupree and Device that Peter basically came up with this point system, which is a system where we can show the sheet that I was showing before as well. It's basically a system where we assign not only just the awards that I was talking about before, the EVPs, the player of the map, and the valuable players. We also assigned exact points, which basically are ranging between -4 and 8. -4 being kind of a useless player, somebody who, I don't know, got maybe like 2 or 3 kills.
Hey, that's you again, Sponge.
Thanks, guys. I'll be here all evening as the punching bag. Look,
So
I was
-4
more of a
is pretty bad.
cerebral player. Can you like accommodate for in-game leaders? Or?
So -4 is pretty bad. I think we determined that, and then it goes up to what?
It goes up to 8, as I was saying. In this case, we can only see -2 to 7, but 8 could be like a big stream carry, like a super hard carry. Here, Simple got a 7, just because it was quite a substantial player of the map. So he got 7 points, but it can go up to 8, and down to -4, like I said at the start. And this is basically like a more exact way for us to determine a player's performance, rather than just doing these awards where we would, for example, not assign minuses to somebody. So in this way, we can actually punish them for kind of having a really bad match, etc. So it's just a more exact way of kind of evaluating a player's performance. And these points actually get further adjusted and balanced depending on how we need to, because especially in a GSL group where you have the upper bracket in a best of 1 and the lower bracket in a best of 3, basically the players that go through the best of 1s, they will only get points and awards for 2 maps if they win the group, while the team that goes from the lower bracket, for example, if they actually go through both series, they will actually have points from 4 maps at least. So this way we have to adjust the players that played at least a lower amount of maps than somebody else, even though they got to the same stage. So the first team in the group played 2 maps. The second team in the group who went through the low bracket played 4. So this way we actually double the amount of points that the players who won the best of 1s get, so that at the end of the tournament we don't have like a very big difference between players who played at a similar average performance, because otherwise we would really have basically a half amount of points for the player who won the group as opposed to the player that was second in the group. So we have to adjust it that way.
Right, so let's get into the next topic then. I guess it seeks kind of nicely, because we're talking about Simple here. He obviously has a lot of them already. And I remember I was talking to Device, who won the MVP award at ECS in London early June. And one of my questions for him was, okay, so you won this time, congratulations, obviously. Who's going to have more MVP medals at the end of 2018? Is it going to be Simple alone, or the rest, or the entire team of Astralis combined? I'm not really privy to the tally right now, but I think they're pretty close, right? So what do you guys think about that question, Sponge? What do you think? Who's gonna end up with the most medals?
That's a good question. I think like it's more difficult for Astralis as a team to keep up their form than Simple. And I know that seems like almost like a ridiculous thing to say, but I remember since DreamHack Winter last year of just having Simple absolutely ravaging everybody week in, week out. Sure, he's been like tapering off a little bit recently, but I can see Na'Vi still considering themselves as a team who wants to attend the smaller events, which means you guys are still giving out MVP awards for events that Astralis might not go to. I think Na'Vi would maybe attend more of it. I guess Simple. I'm going to go with Simple. Let's do it.
Okay, Prof. Over to you. What do you think?
I have to back him up on this. Easy for Simple. I mean, the thinking with attending more events, maybe not even smaller events, just more events, I think that gives the Simple the edge. I think his biggest downfall can be if Electronic goes up and starts stealing MVP award or 2, because he's been playing pretty well, and Simple has been falling off to a degree, even though his falling off is like a 1.20 rating for a LAN or something like that. So it's not that bad, but I think, yeah, Electronic can be his downfall in this bet in a way.
And He's definitely, I mean, Simple's definitely very hungry. I remember I stumbled upon he did a Reddit AMA recently. He didn't ask me anything. Thread, I actually have it here. And he just seems like he's really fired up, right? I mean, he's like, so okay, Simple, how do I get good at Counter-Strike? Oh, you have to become Counter-Strike. You have to spend your whole time in this game. Your life should become Counter-Strike. Always think about this game, watch demos, play DM, aimbots retake, even bunny hop will improve your movement. Follow all competitive tournaments and never give up if something goes wrong. And then there was also a recent interview that we did actually at HLTV.org with NAF, right? That also kind of set him up to I think actually practice a little bit more, especially I mean against Liquid anyway. If someone remembers what I think it was, we talked to Neff and he said something like they could feel like Simple wasn't really all that.
I think like that he doesn't feel like Simple is so impactful on the server or something like that. That playing against Device is much harder than playing against Simple. That was something along the lines that he said. So, and after that, then Simple replied on his VK, like the VContact, like Russian Facebook page, and he said something like, Liquid always have a good time against us playing in North America, that's their home soil, but the next time we meet them, I will destroy them, or something like that. So that was a pretty nice statement.
Like,
got me hyped up.
Let's be honest right now. Like, I have been playing Counter-Strike since I was 14 years of age. I'm now 29. I'm old. I have never witnessed another player as good at the game of Counter-Strike as Simple. And people are like, oh, how can you say that? You know, like, but if you watch the awareness of this kid as a player, and you consider his age, and you consider like what he's achieved in such a short period of time, and then you post other players up next to him, right? You put the likes of like Nico up there and Cold Zero up there next to him and stuff like that. It's not, in my mind, it's not even comparable with what I see. Like Nico and Cold Zero are fantastic players. Like they are absolutely phenomenal. They are definitely amazing Counter-Strike players. But for me, Simple is like so far ahead of everybody else. And like the problem I have is that unfortunately when he went to Liquid and he went and played in North America, the community bullied him into becoming this good Simple. This Simple that doesn't, he's not the Simple that we want. I want Simple to be a villain. I want the best player in the world to roll into the server and just be like, I want him to rock up on stage and just look at Cold Zero and say, listen, motherfucker, I'm going to fucking kill you. Like, not literally, just in the server. Obviously not in real life, guys. Like, let's just chill for a sec. But I want someone with like that level of just absolute zero fucks given, because that is what was cool about Simple. And I love Simple. I think he's, like I just said, I think he's the best player in the world. I think I've ever witnessed anyone as good at Counter-Strike as him. But I wish that we still had bad Simple, in the sense of like he just had that swagger about him that he didn't care. He's become like politically correct. If people need to become politically correct, it's like me. Like I can't swear. I just swore a lot, but I can't swear on like a broadcast, right? For example, to millions of people. I have to like kind of watch what I say. Simple is the kind of guy who, like, we look at it, this is an entertainment product. He can be that guy. He can be everything. He can still be everyone's idol and still be, he doesn't have to be the heel, but like, if you're as good as he is, I don't have any issue with you being cocky. You're allowed to be cocky if you're that good at Counter-Strike, man. Like, why not?
I mean, I don't really understand how somebody can say, I'm sure maybe it was just from Liquid's point of view, but just looking at Cologne, right? I have the final stat sheets now here that I didn't show before. Where you can basically see how that he had 8 Player of the Map awards, while the second most was Nex with 4 from Cologne, right? So you can just see even from this stat sheet that he just dominated, and it might not even be his best event. That was probably Marseille, if I'm not mistaken. So just this is basically like his, maybe like the 3rd best event that he had this year, and he was the player of the match and still the MVP, and still so convincingly. So this just tells you how impactful and how good Simple has been this year. That this is not even his best tournament of 2018, and who knows like how far he's even going to go in the following months, right? Because if he keeps this up, there's absolutely no denying that he was the best player of 2018.
I mean, that's. I mean, before we round off the segment, I guess we can talk a little bit about that. Obviously, we have big events coming up, and the major is going to be. I mean, it's only like what the major is only 3 weeks away or something, 3-4 weeks away. They're certainly contender for this. What do you think, Professor? What do you think it's going to take for Navi to, or I mean, apart from simple stepping up like he does in these tournaments, if they're going to take it?
I don't think it takes much. I don't know where we can actually put their form. Like the last event wasn't that great, but there's a player break. I guess a lot of teams will be a little bit different than they were before the break. So I wouldn't put too much into the E-League performance and just basing it on the whole year that we saw. But it was literally between them and Astralis. So I don't think there's like that they need to do something great, that they need to elevate the level for like a huge margin to win the major, in my opinion. Especially as we saw, Simple is just insane. He can do a lot and just win a best of 3 on his own, and the team as a team is functioning pretty well. So it just comes down to Astralis and is beating Liquid as well in the past.
I'm falling out of the audio there, Prof. I think we caught the gist of it. Now that we're talking about Simple and we're talking about ESL Cologne, and that's the example we chose to show you how we do MVPs. Let's go ahead and watch actually the MVP movie that we do also, apart from giving out the medal. Let's watch as a little break to viewers and us the MVP video of Simple ESL Cologne 2018.
No, or not. Just the second part.
All right. So no questions asked. That's pretty impressive. Whichever way you look at it, I like to look at your stats, Striker. Obviously, I really do, and listen to your opinions. But watching is a whole different beast, right? What do you think, Sponge?
Look, I think I made my thoughts pretty clear on Simple. The kid, for someone who, when you watch his POVs, is like, is that crosshair placement legit, or is he just like confused? But he is, without a doubt, the best player that I've ever seen touch the game. So until I see someone else.
When you watch these clips and you see his op crosshair on one place and then he shoots, and the crosshair is not on the person, but the person dies. I just don't understand how it happens, and it happens like consistently. So he obviously he knows something that I don't know.
He's a wizard.
Yeah.
He's a wizard. All right, let's close the book on that one then, guys. Remember, yes, we're trying to look at the chat every once in a while. I'm trying to get up to speed about what people are writing. People are talking about your coaching career, Striker. I guess that's a kind of a joke.
What? How does anybody even know that?
Yeah,
Like, is that from somebody from the Czech scene?
I have I've seen certainly a lot of actually Czech messages for us.
Oh,
Because there's all the
interesting.
weird characters that I don't know that we talk about every once in a while. We'll take a viewer question. Okay, let's just test it out. There's a guy, Roy fucking Lord, I guess is his name. Just to pick one. And yes, chat, we can swear in this show. What do you think about the new French team? That's
like Dick
alleged?
Stacy. It's not a swear.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
his
yeah.
name.
What do you think about the new French team with Saivu, Apex, NPK, RPK, and Happy? The reports that came out about that. We already have the new restructured G2 come out in early June, and now it seems like there's another one on the way. I mean, it's rumors still, but what do you guys think, Striker? I'll let you start with that.
I mean, it's pretty much the best thing that you can get out of the players that are actually available at this point, right? I mean, you have an NBK and Apex who just relatively recently got released from G2, although they're still under contract, and then you have Zero, who has been the best talent in the French scene for, I don't know, something like 2 years maybe by now, or at least a year. And then who is there? There's RPK, right? And Happy. That's it. And the thing is, like from the reports, that it was supposed to be MBK who was leading this team, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I kind of like it just because Happy has been a little bit too one-dimensional. He hasn't been able to change his style, even his as an individual player. But with MBK leading, maybe that could change somehow. But if this happens, this is actually a team that I'm quite excited about, just because, like I said, it's basically the best thing that you can get from the French scene, aside from what's already put together in G2. So I have to say thumbs up. This is a team that I would really like to watch.
What about you, Chad? Happy on the end there. People were actually, I think many were scared that he was going to IGL. I think is the correct term for that. There were a lot of sighing reliefs when they saw he wasn't going to. French teams seem to be all about chemistry, right? What do you think?
Did you guys do a report about this, or is this just done by those guys who like to read Skype logs?
This was Nell, I think.
Okay, cool. So just guys like to read Skype logs. They're always fun people to deal with. Anyway, if this is a real team, which I guess we may or may not. Oh, look, there's a little dot on where I am in Germany. Cool. If this is a real team, I think it's an exciting prospect. I also agree in the sentiment of not having Happy in-game lead is a really positive one, and the rationale behind that is because bang on, he one-dimensional in the sense of his in-game leading worked in a period of time where force buying was bang on. Right, that was the matter of fact. It was just cutthroat Counter-Strike where if you could get control of the economy, then it would work. He had some really good reads and stuff as an in-game leader. The problem is, like, you just know he's going to be lurking. Hopefully, he's been a little bit humbled by recent times, and within this roster, he can be, I guess, used a little bit better. My big question mark is, where does the explosiveness of this team come from? Now, RPK is a rock player. We've always looked at him like that. MBK is a support player filling the gap. Happy's a lurker. Okay, then we have the other two. We know that one of them is fantastic within the realms of FPL, right? He's obviously played within matches within lower French teams, but where's his tier 1 opponents? Can he grow into being a good player? I definitely think so. He's very young. The possibility is there for this French squad. It's just French Counter-Strike has always been about attitude, and you're bringing a bad egg into what is probably a positive environment. And Happy, unfortunately, is seen as that bad egg, right? Because he's been stubborn to change his in-game leadership style, and the rest of the team are probably all. I don't think we should be beating around the bush here. With a lot of these French rosters, it has been the sense of the matter that they aren't motivated, or they don't like playing with each other, or there's some other factor going on. This new roster has the potential to be motivated, to be the best French team. I think that G2 have a lot of proving to do still. I think there's positive signs here. I think it's a chance for the French team to rebuild. I just hate the fact that we have this going down now before the major, right? This is the problem. And this is why, and I'm not going to get stuck into this tangent because I could sink 2 hours of my life into discussing why these windows for fucking majors in the most stupid time I've ever
Yep.
fucking considered. But the fact of the matter is, this French team could come together now. G2 could either do really poorly or really well, and then that's going to influence whatever happens with this roster, right? There's other considerations as well, like Scream and Keo and all those kind of guys are still out there. It'd be nice if, and could be said about the Swedish scene, about not the Danish scene, but there's a couple of other, areas of the community that could be looked at in a similar way, is it needs to all kind of settle. But if we're looking at it just from this 5 in this context, I think there's an exciting prospect, and they could definitely be the best French team in the scene.
Hoas is commenting French CS equals new UK CS meme. I guess.
I mean, I'm happy that, not happy, but Apex and NBK will be playing if this actually happens. Like seeing them on the bench or whatever for 3 months is kind of depressing, especially with the and all that stuff. So that's a big win. I think did NBK play at every major? I don't know, but he played at a lot. He's definitely a iconic CS player, CS:GO player at least. So kind of seeing him miss out on this without even having a chance to qualify or something, it's kind of sad for me.
I mean, you can just look at it the way he's tweeting about being on the bench and this allegedly huge buyout he has, right? He's not happy about that. I mean, so yeah, it's pretty obvious.
Who would be, right?
Look. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here with any of these things, and I think Nathan is a very stand-up guy. I think he's one of the more adult players that I've ever dealt with, and from an ex-player perspective, and someone who considers himself an adult for at least 6 hours of every day, these guys need to start considering what they're signing. Does money as a bulk sum sound really good? Yeah, it sounds bloody amazing. You know what doesn't sound amazing? Having your salary cut by 50% or 75% while you sit on the bench and wait for a new team, and your buyout is set as something just absolutely ludicrous that nobody is ever going to think of buying you in the first place. If you're going to sign up to this stuff, you have to be well and truly mentally prepared for if you're going to get benched. You need to already consider what you're going to do. Okay, am I going to stream? Am I going to try and be more of an influencer? Am I just going to grind out FPL super hard, show my worth, and then force a team who has the money to buy me out? This kind of stuff, like if you look at it and you go, yeah, it sucks. Oh, I'm tweeting, I'm stuck on the bench. Or, I wanted to make this move and play for Mouse Sports at this event, but I couldn't for whatever reason. All this kind of stuff, it's a contract. We're not dealing with Mickey Mouse bullshit anymore, boys. The way that Counter-Strike has been shaped within the last 4 years is insane. The way esports is constantly growing day in, day out. I'm at a bloody expo today with thousands and thousands of people wandering through this place, and there's esports everywhere. This is big business now. We need to pull our heads out of our fucking asses, and we need to start reading contracts before we're signing shit. Now look, I'll stick my hand up and say I signed a contract back in 2008 for the CGS to become a professional player. I didn't read that shit. I was sitting on the floor of a hotel room at 18 years of age. I got no idea. The thing is, the professionalism and the way it's all changed in these positions that players are in, reflecting onto how that confirms to him not playing at the major, it's a bigger issue. It's people need to start actually considering their actions. And this isn't directed at MBK. I just like to go on rants. So I'm going to shut the fuck up.
We need to be more adult, Sister Man, with makeup on his face, right? Diva makeup.
Look, I am comfortable with my sexuality. I'm more than comfortable to wear makeup as well. You can put me in a dress. I don't give a fuck. It's all good. Let's do it.
Spongy's dropping truth though. Players are getting enough money. They should really, there's 3 of them, have lawyers going over this shit before they sign. Now, Sponge, coming on the back of your contracts that you say you signed, let's talk a little bit about more, I guess, your career in the smaller sense, but in Australian CS in a bigger sense, because we actually had by a prof who's on my left here, a pretty thorough, let's say, report or a feature that you did about the story of Australian CS. You can see the title of it here. It's on HLTV.org. Go read it. It's a great read. It's a pretty thorough look into how a scene that's a bit isolated, to put it mildly, has unfolded. And Sponge, it's no surprise that you're actually featured in there as well throughout the thing. I think actually one of my favorite parts about is the first quote that's in the article, and it's Sponge's story about going to one of the first DreamHack winners, I think, or at least DreamHack winner, the BYOC story. Can you just relay that just shortly, and we'll get into the whole story afterwards?
Sure. So we won a qualifier against JKS's team at the time online to go to MSI Beat It, and that was the event in the end of 2013 for it was just a Chinese event, and like Fnatic was there, Very Games was there, SK, but this was SK with Modi and the likes of Twist, those kind of guys were all there. We went to that tournament, and then basically based off that, we knew DreamHack Winter was coming up very quickly. So with our team owner at the time, Talno, we discussed the options of going to that event and trying to qualify for the major at the BYOC. We were able to get enough sponsorship money together to go to this tournament and play within the BYOC. And I think I touched on it in the article where I was saying he thought it would be an experience. So what he did was he put us in the main hall, and if you've ever been to the main hall of a Jönköping DreamHack Winter, it is basically a rave. So we're playing Nuke, T-side, or CT side, I forget whatever it is, with music so loud. And we had these shitty mics where the microphone was like just here. It was just like a little, just picking up audio. It wasn't even like a boom in front of your face. So we were just yelling the whole time. That was how we got knocked out of the BYOC to Zapso, or however you pronounce that team's name.
Yeah.
That was fun. I won't make any salty comments about how that guy's vac banned or anything, will I? Anyway, more importantly, that was like our first real step on the international scene and our first crack at like the big leagues, and we had to see how everything was unfolding. I remember we went and like skipped the line so we could go be in the front seat so we could cheer on Fnatic against NIP, as we had made friends with Fnatic while everybody else there was with NIP, and then funny, Fnatic won the whole thing. But yeah, long story short, it was a risk we took, and basically throughout the first maybe year of my team's professional existence, it was us spending money we either got from sticker money or sponsorship money to send ourselves to events while we were all still either studying or working full time. So it was a big balancing act.
Yeah, and Jönköping is really far away too, which is, I guess, kind of also the point of the whole thing. Prof, can you tell us a little bit about what you found out, really researching into the scene? What does the isolation mean for a scene like that, and how did it actually come up?
I mean, as anyone will ask them, like just getting to a tournament or getting to anywhere in Europe or North America, it takes practically 2 days, and then to get back into the normal groove, the sleep cycle and everything like that. So far away, pretty expensive to get to anywhere, and of course the internet doesn't allow you to play with anyone except people in Australia. Even playing with Asians and stuff like that isn't really a possibility. So yeah,
we have issues. I think we have issues. Are you in Australia right now, Prof? Is that why the internet is so shit? Do we have?
Wow.
Is this what it? Is this an emulation of Australia in 2012?
Yeah, this is
when you try to get pings to European servers. Is that relatable, Sponge, at all?
Yeah, I can feel that. I can definitely feel that. I literally moved apartment to a brand new place on the beach so that I could get NBN, which is National Broadband Network, to get fiber so I could stream. Otherwise, I was on a shitty connection where I was playing from my parents' house on some copper network that was like fucked. Whenever, I swear to God, this isn't even a joke, whenever my mum's business phone rang, my internet connection would drop out. It was like, just fucking kill me now. It was horrible. But hopefully the internet's better now. I don't know. I can call someone at home. We can suss it out.
Yeah, this is also a point actually in the article, and I guess you can talk along with that, Chad, of you not going home again, because obviously you're in Cologne now, and you guys, once you broke through with the Vox Eminar, you didn't come home. And there's some talk about that in the article, right? What does it mean when a team from an isolated team breaks through and doesn't come back? How do you feel about that now? In the article, I think you have some pretty. I mean, there's certainly some conscious, some of you, something on your conscience from that, or.
Yeah, look, so this is like a bigger thing than what I think people would ever be able to understand. And I think that what I get to do as a job, like, let me preface this. I think what I get to do as a job, the fact that I get to travel around the world, I get paid a very nice amount of money to do my job, which is just talking about a computer game. I'm very privileged. But people need to realize that I didn't just get given this, in a sense. This has been part of my life now for 15 years now that I'm 29. Fucking hell. But I also worked real people jobs. I worked as a night a night filler, which is stacking shelves in a supermarket. I worked as a produce manager in a supermarket. I worked as an IKEA furniture assembly man, going around to people's houses putting furniture together. I was a plumber. I was selling merchandise at festivals around Australia, and then to start Counter-Strike and then have the dream of competing against the best in the world and to get paid to do so. That was the dream, right? That was the goal. And then once that was achieved, there was a lot of sacrifices that had to come with it. Obviously, with Renegades, it was an American organization. They wanted us to live in North America, and that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, I completely understand that from a sponsorship standpoint. I understand it from like a marketing standpoint, even just a competition standpoint. I get all of these things. I really understand them. So we had to go live in Las Vegas. Now, we made it seem pretty glamorous at the time, but mate, if you've ever been to Las Vegas, living in a hotel there, it's not fun. You can't cook for yourself. There's not even a fridge in our fucking room. We're having the same meal at one of 3 restaurants every day. It's not like there's a park around the corner to go for like like go see some wilderness. It's a fucking desert. And if you're not there in the middle of the city where the people are getting drunk. Anyway, basically, I had a girlfriend. Sacrifices were made. Life is very lonely within the industry of traveling around the world and having your family 24 hours away at any given time. There's lots of stuff to this that I think a lot of people don't understand. And they're going to say, yeah, but you don't have to do it. And they're right. I don't have to do it. But I do this because I love it. And like everything else, there are pros and cons. And one of the cons with Counter-Strike, especially with what I do, and there's a couple of other people who do it in the same boat of traveling around the world all the time, can sympathize, is you don't have that home base. You don't have that level of security in your life. You're kind of just going from event to event, and that's it until you choose to finish. And I don't want to stop doing this. So as I'm kind of complaining, I'm not complaining at all.
Let me get back to the actual quote. If we can bring it up from the article, I have it on the screen right here. So the point of this whole thing is that you broke through, right? And there was some murmur about you also having spots at events that because you were the best Australian team, even though you lived overseas. And it says, I know that when we moved away, it left a massive void because any experience we were getting, we weren't giving back to the scene. What does that mean? What actually happens then?
So like the way it works now and the way it worked when we were still living at home was you would go over to an event, and you can even reflect on 1.6 and source days when you do this, is say you'd go and play an event like an ESWC or a WCG, which would happen once a year. You go to these tournaments and you would learn a lot because you wouldn't just go there to play 2 maps and lose. You would go there to play a boot camp, and the amount of time that you would put into Counter-Strike was every match for you was a tournament match, right? You would practice for 5 or 6 days, you'd play the tournament, everything was about winning. That's all it was about. It was just about getting that W and learning as much as you could so that you could, get as better as quickly as possible. And realistically, that's the worst way to practice to win a tournament or to win matches. It's a great way to get better as a team when you're only afforded those opportunities ever so rarely. You want to just grab as much knowledge and soak it up as quickly as possible. So when you stop going back to your country, you don't feed that information to the player base below you. When I learn like a new strategy or like we become more disciplined, like when you come back from a tournament like that, you play so disciplined. Like any mistake that you would have made previously or any mistake that the teams make against you, you punish. That's why it's so easy, because they overpick and your aim is on point. You're just fucking zoned into a higher level of playing. And they learn very quickly. They see what you're doing. They adapt. They learn from like playing pugs with you. And when you do what we did, which is completely just suck that void out, take the best 5 players or the 5 players who were competing internationally all the time, and just go overseas, you don't leave them with a lot to learn. And when they can't get the positions anymore, and we're just taking it, but we're only practicing in North America, it's even harder. But the difference between 2015 and 2018 is, I swear, Australian teams are at an event every second week now. We opened the door for Oceania to get invitations and qualifier spots for more tournaments than they would have ever had. And I don't mean that like in a cocky sense. I mean that someone had to do it. If it wasn't my team, if it wasn't the JKSs and the Azs showing up as the stars, it would have been someone else, I hope. But, that's a possibility now that didn't exist beforehand.
How was this viewed? I mean, you talked to a bunch, Prof. You talked to a bunch of the Australian players, former and the current. How's that viewed? The stuff he's saying here. I mean, is that the general consensus?
About the Vox people going away?
Yeah.
That's, yeah, I mean, that's somewhat. There's a bit of like kind of a resentment, but not that much. In a way that like, they understand that someone needed to do it and they got the opportunity, they fought for the opportunity, let's say. But at certain points, I guess more in like 2015 or 16 than now, other teams kind of felt like they couldn't even prove or do anything to get to the same position. But I guess that's how it goes. Like, you know, sometimes someone is at the right place at the right time and they get the opportunity to go overseas, go play in NA and stuff like that. I mean, Immunity was the team that kind of struggled the most through the early periods, and that kind of mini storyline was kind of why I actually started writing this. That was something that I heard about a bit, and then that sparked the interest to write something more in depth about the Australian scene. And I think that's something that people don't really know about. So that was kind of the interesting part of the Sponge versus Sniper thing going on.
To close this one out, Prof, let's talk a little bit about what it's looking like now. I mean, with Sponge all the way out of the game, at least on the server, and the teams trying to make it on their own. What's the scene looking like now? I mean, you were there for 2 IEM Sydneys in a row now, and obviously at both events we had some local teams going pretty far. Is it healthy now? What's it looking like? I mean, obviously. Probably internet's better. There's more money in the scene, I guess. ESL opened up in Australia. So what's the scene? Is it good? Or is it failing?
I think it's looking pretty decent. I think Sponge can also say what he feels about the scene, but I think it's pretty decent with a couple of pretty good teams going on. They're competing like against each other for qualifiers, and I feel like maybe not now, but a few months ago, every qualifier was really contested. You never know who was gonna end up on top. Now it's been like Greyhound kind of establishing themselves as the number one team, as the top dog in Down Under, let's say. But yeah, I think that's also positive that they have like one team at the top that's gonna evolve and try to at least compete overseas and get some wins at these events that they've been having a lot of chances to go overseas and play. That's been pretty positive, I think.
So for the final word, Sponge, what do you think about that?
So the main level of discussion on analyst desks whenever doing anything to do with Asian or Australian kind of tournaments is there's like 4 teams within Australia. I think, you know, it's bang on that maybe Greyhound is stepping out above everybody else at the moment as being a little bit more consistent. But I think obviously you've got the Tainted Minds, you've got Order, you've got Greyhound, and then Chiefs would be that third team. But Chiefs, unfortunately, with all those VAC-ban players in that roster, will never get the same level of opportunities. In terms of the scene as a whole, I think local competitions, we've never, like, it's always kind of, we never really struggled for local tournaments. We've always had online leagues and like local lands and stuff. But now, in terms of being afforded so many positions for international tournaments, it's ridiculous. Like, I think that these guys should be licking their lips. The amount of different teams that get opportunities to go overseas is huge. I think that maybe between those 4 teams I was mentioning, it might be a little bit diluted. I think that you could maybe get a couple of those names out of there and, you know, make maybe not a super team, but make a stronger squad than what is out there at the moment. But I guess, you know, you have to know all the personalities and all how all that kind of stuff works, and that's not something I'm super privy to anymore. But I think definitely positive roads, and if Counter-Strike continues to grow in the manner that it is, maybe one day soon I'll end up heading back there to do something worthwhile within Australian Counter-Strike. You never know.
You heard it here first, guys. So let's go on, especially since
before you go on,
yeah,
would you go
sure.
and coach an Australian team? Is that like the
right now? Right now, I wouldn't.
Or anytime.
In the future, I would love to be able to go back. There's lots of different things that I'm looking at to potentially get back to Australia one day. It's not that I don't like living in Europe. I think it's much more of a liberal lifestyle. But I would love to be able to coach a team within Australian Counter-Strike and you know, have them be a force to be reckoned with, so to speak.
So Johnny Gaming for the win. Just type the Sponge back to AU HLTV.org confirmed. Right, there it is.
There you go.
This is when you spam the emote, guys. Yeah, you can see the account coming. So Scoots is in there in the chat. Scott Smith, Legend of the Scene, AU Cosplayer King coming home. And this is of course a reference to your face paint, Sponge. For those of you who don't know, you were at an event today, Gamescom, right, in Cologne. And there they talk about other games than CS:GO apparently.
Other games apparently exist. I wouldn't know,
Yeah,
but
so
people say so.
there's like all these other games, like not even just like a couple. There's like a bazillion other games, and I have no interest in those other games. I just like looking pretty, so that's why I put this diva face paint on. So that's the reason.
A good reason as any. So let's move on, guys, especially since Striker hasn't really been on the mic for a while now. Are you still there, Milan?
Yes,
That's good to hear. This is actually a topic that came from you, because we were talking and we were discussing within HLTV.org, what does it really mean that you have a major right after the player break? That's the way they set it up this time. But before we delve into the actual question that's on the screen right now, and you'll get to talk first, I promise, Striker. Let's watch some interviews that our good colleague Lucas did at E-League with players, and also a certain analyst that you'll probably recognize. Let's watch the video with the interviews first.
I think it's very hard to find an ideal time to do it, because you can argue that if it's too close to the player break, the teams and the players are not at their 100% maybe, but if it's deeper into the season, then you can argue that, well, maybe there's burnout with some of the teams because they've had to play so many tournaments, and you can't prepare as much as you'd like maybe for a major. I think also when you look at it, there's the Masters before the major, and there's also a full week before the new challengers phase starts. So I think if teams just put in the work prior to Masters and then the extra week after, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think when you look at the number of tournaments now, I think that's a decent amount of time to prepare. Not ideal, but I think it's doable.
I think it's not ideal because it kind of forces you to play in the player break. I think any player who just stays practicing for himself at least is gonna just be in better shape if he plays throughout the player break or like for a large part. So I would certainly prefer it like in the middle of the season somewhere. Would make more sense to me.
I think it's really difficult when the major is so close after the player break ends, just because a lot of people aren't going to be super warmed up. They're not going to be super ready. If they're the type of team that lives in another country and then they have to go back home for their break just to be with their family and stuff, it doesn't really give them much leeway to completely relax and just do whatever. It's more of you have to be home, but you also have to be practicing at the same time, just so you don't lose everything. So in that regard, it kind of sucks. So I think it's really up to teams right now to decide if they want to be like hammering right through another tournament as soon as they get done after the player break. I think that 12 days, like after we start up again after the player break, it's kind of not too much time. And we decided that we didn't want to go to a tournament before the major, because the major is the biggest tournament, and we wanted to make sure that we're completely prepared for that. So that was our reasoning for why we're just going to be boot camping straight up before the major. I mean, teams can do whatever they want, but that's a decision that we made.
I think it was the same as last year. It was the same as the Boston Major, because it was after the Cancun event in ECS. We had a small player break and we played it through to the major. And I think from my perspective, it's pretty good, just because everyone gets a break from CS when you've been on the road for 3-4 weeks, and finally just have to get your own time and kind of build the motivation again for the game. And I think it's pretty good. It's a big tournament. It's really prestigious, and people want to have a good break before it, I think.
All right, so that was players and also Yanko, now a coach, coming from E-League premiere a few weeks back on this topic. Is the major scheduled wrongly? Does it make sense to have it this way around? And Striker, like I said, you were the one to actually raise this question. So I'll start with you. What do you think about this?
I mean, I'm quite surprised how many players actually said they're okay with it. Just because it doesn't make sense to me from almost any perspective. I mean, sure, maybe you actually get somewhat of a break from CS before you get to the best event of the year, and maybe you'll be able to recharge some batteries before you do that. But I mean, you can do that yourself. Like if you want to
100%.
prioritize, you can just do that yourself. And so my big problem with it is that you don't really get a break. Like the whole reason that we actually set this, I mean, not we, the players, actually set up this off season was to actually have a standardized break, and this way they actually don't get a proper one. They actually have to think about the major and have to think about practicing as much as they can. So that's my biggest issue with it. And the second one, why we actually have this off season is the player changes. They basically teams, and we can see that now. We've had almost nothing going on in the off season, while the previous two were super stacked with roster changes, because it was after the major where teams are able to kind of figure out, okay, who fits into this team and who doesn't. So from both perspectives, it just doesn't make sense to me to have the major after the break. I'd really rather have it back as we had it before the PGL major, where which was at the end of July, and then we got the break, and then we got players to make all the changes, or teams to make all the changes, and people could actually get a full break, almost like a full month, maybe with some online matches, because the USL Pro was starting at that time.
But the roster change stuff, isn't this just because you work for a news site that works with CS:GO news and roster moves, that you really want some drama to happen? I know it's been
No, it's
quite
not
a few
about that.
weeks.
It's just like that teams actually have a set break where they can do these changes, but now they can't because the major is right afterwards, and they can't do any more roster changes before that. It just doesn't make sense, right? So it's like, obviously for me, like I'm subjectively wanting just to some more drama or whatever, but it doesn't have anything to do with it, right?
What do you think, Chad? I know I saw you nodding in agreement a few times.
Yeah, I agree with it with everything that's been said. Here's another thing: we give players way too much say. I was a player. You know what players want? Players want the easiest way to fuck up and continue to have chances to compete in a tournament. I want to lose. That's why I would, if I was a player, I'd fucking love Swiss. Give me Swiss. Give me best of threes. If I have a first map, I can fucking suck. If I have the first round of Swiss where I suck, it doesn't matter. That's why we shouldn't give these guys so many opinions. We are doing a competition. It is a competition where week in, week out, almost twice a month now, we are having a tier 1 tournament. Why the fuck does every single tournament need to be the same? It doesn't. It can all be different. It can all be different levels of competition. It can be cutthroat. One can be, a little bit more gimmicky. One can be this. One can be that. Now, if we look and we reflect on the whole major situation, we can solve this problem if Valve would just do one simple thing. Let's just use our brains. Let's just sit here and think for 2 seconds. All right, well, we've got the player break, and we want to put the player break in summer because people like to go out on holidays in summertime. So let's just say, I don't know, the entire month of June is the first major of the year, and the entire month of November is the second major of the year. Now, why do I suggest these things? First and foremost, once the player, first of all, you can ramp into it. You can ramp into the major, and I agree with what you said about the players can choose to have their own breaks. You don't have to attend every tournament. Why would you possibly have to attend every tournament? If you don't want to go, you don't have to go. If you're part of an organization which has you by the fucking balls and they say you got to go to every tournament, that's your own fucking problem. It's not mine. That's your own. I'm retarded. I choose to go to every single tournament I can because I love sitting there talking about Counter-Strike. But as a player in a team, you maybe don't necessarily have to do that for whatever reason. So let's have 2 designated windows in the year and ones that make sense. You can ramp up. We can see the teams. We can see everybody progress. The lineups can stay together and they can go. Even if, say, the first 2 months of the year sucks, we can still build into the major. We can still get something better. We're not making roster changes continuously. Right now, the position of the majors, I believe, is the reason we have so much instability with rosters, because you come out of a player break, you go into the major, we lose. Oh, okay, well now we have 6 months until the next major. Let's just keep making roster changes until something makes sense. You go into another player break where everybody is able to sit there, they're able to come up with new styles of play. You're not promoting the highest level of Counter-Strike when you come out of a player break. I can sit there for 4 weeks with my team completely nerd up, do a big, learn a jump bug, come up with a couple of gimmicky strategies, win 3 best of ones on the same goddamn fucking map because nobody plays against me, and now become a top 8 team in the world? What the fuck are we doing? Like, honestly, that is not promoting the best Counter-Strike teams in the world. That is promoting who is, going to sit there and use their holiday time to nerd it out the most. And that is going to do who can use a gimmick, who can use something to their advantage. If you ramp up the season, starting, let's say we start January 1. We're obviously not starting January 1, but let's say, that's the starting point and we ramp up. We get a couple of months, everybody can build, everybody can learn strategies. Oh, sick, we've got an awesome rivalry between Astralis and FaZe. That's really cool, man. Coming into the major, we have a storyline. It's my job to tell the story. Coming out of this player break, what the fuck do I get? I get Zotac, I get DreamHack Masters Stockholm, which is going to be, you know, a good event, and then into a major to tell a story. But if I was like a team going into these two events that I just listed, I'm holding things back. I'm not giving 120%, especially if I'm a FaZe or an Astralis. The only reason if I'm a FaZe and I'm going balls out for this is because I can win $1 million with the Grand Slam. Anyway, majors in the wrong place. Easy fucking fix. Just do it. Stop making me complain about it. I'm mad.
It definitely shows. It definitely shows. Family show, I think, is being spammed a lot. Obviously, you get to swear here, chat, but keep it down just a little bit. But my thinking was, okay, so isn't it a good thing to have like the really punchy big thing coming right out of the break to really set the pace for the whole thing? I mean, if the most important 3-week-long event is right there, then you're off to a good start, right? What's really the matter with that, except that people aren't going on breaks or using them properly? I mean, why wouldn't it be a good thing to start with the best tournament?
I'd rather go out with a bang rather than start with one, really. Like you
But
start the season with the
won't
best
you
thing
end
and
up
then you
with
just go downhill, right?
Isn't there like a chance that the teams will be completely bummed out and exhausted by the end of it?
I mean, that's what kind of happened for PGL. I mean, that's what players were complaining about before the PGL Krakow major, that the season was so long. That was I think it was end of July, beginning of August or something like that.
But we've said that before with Sponge. Like you can actually,
but yeah,
I mean, sure, depending on organization, but you can actually set a break for yourself before the major if you want it. Like unless your organization is really, really against it, like I'm sure you're going to be able to figure it out. So like I don't get this argument really.
I think it's a small plus, but comparing to having the major before the break has a lot more benefits to that than to having it after. So that's just my thinking about the thing. Especially the roster change thing is so annoying. I mean, the whole first 7-8 months of the year were constant roster changes. Like you never know when it's going to happen. Like even Cloud9 did one in March, and then they did one 2 months later because they figured out, okay, the major is still 4 months away, so might as well do it now. So it just didn't feel like we had any cohesion throughout the whole season. It just felt like a lot of roster changes, and then Astralis and Navi being okay, and FaZe somehow being good with standards.
But there's also a user here that's actually probably like a counter argument to your point, and this is getting to be a bit of a trope, but his name is Equivalent Dixchange. I don't know why. Anytime there's like a good comment that we read aloud, it's always something naughty. Anyway, so the counter argument to your point, Chad, is that players whine a lot if the major is before the break. They say they're all tired and play bad without a break.
Yeah, okay. So let's look at a couple of examples for that. So you have players who will probably go in saying that. Those are the ones who need to take a page out of Astralis' book. What did Astralis do last year? They skipped ESL1 Cologne, right? Sure, it didn't help them in the long run, but they chose to take that break. There's no reason that they can't choose to take that break. And not only that, different teams practice differently. A FaZe clan, for example, now this is fuck, you've got to really use your memory here, boys. But Kiyoshima, when he was on the roster, said that the team felt that they practiced better within a tournament environment. So they would go to as many tournaments as possible so that they could, you know, practice in that kind of environment. Now, from someone who, you know, when I played professionally, when we played online scrims as just practice, it wasn't as good as when we played an online official. We took that more seriously, and then obviously you take a LAN event the most seriously, right? So you have those different ramp-up techniques. If you're a FaZe, maybe you feel that you play better under tournament conditions. If you're an Astralis, maybe you feel better sitting on the sidelines and just geeking it the hell out and counter-stratting everybody. So different strokes for different folks. Just because some of these players complain, it means that they're not looking at the bigger picture. They're just kind of riding the wave and going to every tournament as it comes at them. And I think that you can definitely have arguments for every single possibility, but the one that makes the most sense from a standing back and looking at it subjectively point of view is to structure the season so it ramps up, you have your nice big crescendo, you crown yourself a champion, and then you go on a player break. You have maybe a week or two before that player break so teams can already make their roster changes, do all that kind of bullshit, have the player break, everyone has a nice little holiday, sit on the beach, drink my pina colada, have my girlfriend there, she's going to suck some money out of me for a little while, move on to the next one, go to the next couple tournaments, and do it all over again. That's the way it should be. Right now, it's just so hodgepodge all over the place. We need to kind of fix it. Anyway,
I thought you were going too far for this family show?
No,
At
no,
one
no, no,
point
no.
there was,
I've got the
I
line.
was getting scared
I got the
about
line.
one of the
That
words
was
you
the
were
last
using.
second save, definitely.
Well, when sometimes it goes together, right? Anyway, so the chat's really awesome right now. Thanks, guys, for yeah. Here come the lulz. Thanks for writing so many messages. I want to stay before we get to the next topic. I want to just to say thanks and bring some of those up. So Derry Gezumo, sorry about that, says he writes, do you think teams make too many roster changes and don't have patience to let a roster settle? I mean, it obviously ties into the schedule, right, and the way it's structured. But what do you guys think about that? Striker, I'll throw it over to you first.
I mean, I've never had the feeling that some team, or at least I don't remember, maybe except for like FNS in Cloud9, where I thought like this player wasn't really given a fair shot, right? So I really don't think so. I really don't think that there's too many roster changes. I think most teams stay relatively stable, and of course the ones that don't, they usually don't really do well. Like if we look at the top teams, most of them have stayed relatively, at least the core has stayed the same for a very long time, and maybe they've switched out 1 or 2 players over the last year or so, or maybe 2 years. So I really don't think that there's too many roster changes. I think it's very rarely that I see some team do a change way too soon.
I mean, you also have to remember that you're privy to the scene and you follow it, right? From outsiders, it might be a bit different. Prof, what about you on that sense? Isn't it true that maybe it's too fast? I think the FNS thing is pretty good. I talked to him at ECS. Sorry to just keep on talking. I talked to him and he was like basically really tired of the situation. Like he didn't even want to do an on-record interview with us because he was just so tired of getting the same questions all the time about, okay, so basically I'm on this team, they don't want to play with me, I don't want to play with them, but we're stuck here until the eventual roster moves happened, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking when you asked the question to Striker, I was kind of thinking in my mind which roster moves we actually had this year, and I don't think that we had a lot of them. I think we maybe had bad roster moves more than like two roster moves happening too fast. Like the FNS case shows that they just obviously didn't want to play with him or with playing his style. So I think that could have just been avoided if they kind of went through it more thoroughly or something like that. And at the SK MIBR situation with Bolts, if you look at that, that's just a roster move that should have happened before, because he was obviously on the cutting board for 3 months or something like that, and everyone knew it. And if they would do it before, it would still be 2 roster moves, but not 2 roster moves in 3 months separation that kind of take time to I get the chemistry and all that with a new player. So in a way, I think maybe that's a roster move that should have happened before or should have happened even sooner. So I don't think that we have, I agree with Striker in that regard, that I don't think we have too many, on the top level at least, too many roster moves.
I mean, my counterpoint to that would be the Swedish scene right now. I talked to Exist at the same event. He was like, the scene is in a pretty bad spot. I mean, no one's playing the right roles, and it's just people changing from one team to the other. I mean, what do you think, Chad? Isn't that an example of maybe at least one scene where things happen a little too frequently?
I think the problem is that we don't have a window for all of these trades. If all these trades happened within the same window of time, it would be like, okay, well, this is the trade window. But because it's spread out between nationalities and different little, I guess, nests of teams, right? Within the Danish team, there's like 3 teams who can swap players continuously, right? You can use that with the French scene as well. The Swedish scene is another good example of all those things. And because it's drawn out over several months, it's not just all happening at the same period of time. It feels like there's too many roster changes. I think if you look at it from a subjective standpoint, you're looking back and you maybe like funnel it in, it doesn't seem, I don't think it's so bad. I think there's a couple which may have been a little bit rash, or may, from at least my perspective, looking going, that doesn't look like that's the problem, be like a question mark. But at the end of the day, I don't think there are too many. Like we could be at a point where people are just clan hopping constantly. I think it's not too bad, and I think it's going to become more and more restrictive as we move forward. What I think eventually will be the end goal in Counter Strike is when we have the coaching staff, the lead coach. Then we have we may even get to the point where we have like an offensive and defensive coach, and then we have got an analyst or a team of analysts. But I think eventually the head coach will be the guy doing the hiring and the firing. And if you don't like Billy Bob over here, you and Sammy, you don't like Billy Bob, you're not getting rid of Billy Bob. He's staying in the team because the coach says he's the best at his role. Right now, there's too many personalities which get a chance to dictate. Oh, such and such, he used my toothpaste, so we got to get rid of him, right? Like, that kind of stuff is going to go. It's going to be super professional like we're dealing with any sports in the world right now, where you pick the best 5 players available for your roster, and whether you like each other or not, that's the team. Right.
There was coming up that point. There was certainly a team that I think was deserving of a role like that, or could have benefited from it. When you saw the current, not the current Optic roster, but the one that was half American and half Danish. I think that's maybe a pretty good example of what you mean there. That they needed someone strong to cut through and say, this is what it's going to be like. You can't just group up on this one guy because you're the same nationality. I mean, is that the sort of thing you're talking about?
That was like a team that. The thing is, as it is right now, you can't force players to do that because the coach or anyone doesn't have the power over like a config or a Cajun B to tell them to shut up and do whatever. Stanislav, who is a less accomplished player, that they need to listen to him doesn't make a lot of sense. That's the issue right now, from what I see at least.
Also, there's one question that's actually been asked. I think it was the first real question that was there, and I need to apologize for everyone who asked about this. We did talk about it, but then we completely forgot actually answering it. Striker, this one is for you. When are we gonna decide on the MVP for IEM Shanghai, an event that's pretty old by this point?
Yeah. You asked me 2 questions. I answered the first one, forgot about the second one.
That's on me.
But yeah. It's going to be decided before Stockholm, so by the end of August, where you're going to know who the MVP of Shanghai is. But it will be decided. We just have to go back.
All right. I hope that's answer enough. Thanks for all the questions. Remember to just keep flowing, keep them flowing. I'll look at the chat whenever I can. We have actually the last one before we go to the next break. It's about roster moves. It's about C9. It's actually about a lot of the stuff we've just been talking about. Amon the Gear asks if Energy continues to bump out at larger events, major qualifiers. Obviously, talking about this one actually, and also the minor. Will Cirque leave for C9? Would this move help C9, or are they really a few roster moves away? Cirque obviously being the big AWP star from Bulgaria at this point. Someone's shaking their head on the stream, and Sponge is looking like really. Yeah, you don't believe that, do you?
I think there's a lot to go down. I think that C9 roster is done. I think after the major, it's done. I think we might see members of that team retire. Rush is now left in obscurity. Automatic is probably a top 5 North American player. Left without a top 5, even a top 3 North American team. So that's a bit of a shame for that whole Cloud9 roster. I don't think speculating one player going to a team will fix it. I think that they have a lot of roster moves that have to happen before Cloud9 is a successful team. But I think Cirque has definitely proven himself to be a decent player within the realms of North America. It's a big leap from North America to Europe, the competition. I know they're playing good tournaments and he's putting up numbers, but it doesn't translate the same way. I think there's differences there. NRG about the bombing out and all that kind of stuff. If we look at that, I think that's really unfair. They messed up at the major qualifier, and that's just one tournament. I don't think the majors, sure, level of prestige, definitely. There's the most prestigious tournaments, but we have tier 1 tournaments now all the time. So I don't think that, it sucks and it would hurt a lot knowing that they are better than the teams that they lost to. That's just one of those days, though. It's any given Sunday at this point in a lot of these matches, especially towards the upper echelons. So, yeah.
I definitely agree with that. It feels like I'm not sure if they underestimated the minor because they were such huge favorites at it. I'm really not sure what the problem was, but it like Chad said, it's really unfair to kind of look at like somebody potentially leaving Energy because of one result. I feel like that would be a little bit premature because generally, outside of that, they've actually been doing quite well.
Also, just to round this one off, now that it's mentioning Cirque, I want to give a shout out to him. Actually, he's such a very sweet man. Actually, he's like a beast at the AWP.
kind
He's
of a
been putting up
description is
big
that?
numbers. He's so cute. I remember I did an interview with him at ECS after they went pretty far on that, and we went through the motions, and he was answering the questions really well, and about being young and having all this pressure on him now that people are beginning to notice him, and it was just pretty straightforward, and he was pretty nervous, I saw, and then when we finished up the interview, he was like, "Thank you for not salty questions." That was all he was really thinking about. Okay, so when are people going to notice me enough that they're going to put the screw on me in these interviews? I think it was pretty. Shout out to him.
And his semi-American accent, like he picked it
He
up
actually,
so
I was
fast.
so surprised when I first heard
That
him
was so
talk.
funny.
So at this point, at least for a while, Chad, I see you looking away at the screen anyway. You're not holding it. You're not having eye contact with us anyway. I think we're going to put you a bit on hold. I hope that's okay with you. We're going to come back to you because we have another guest coming in for the next topic. Let's see if let's see if the next guest is coming up. We have Sir Scoots, Scott Smith, a long-time personality in esports, veteran. CSGO's old man, I think some people call you, Scott. Are you there?
I am here, yeah.
That's calling from Phoenix, Arizona. Thanks for taking your time setting up the interview at the last possible hour, I think, to talk about a little bit about the next segment, which is that Valve apparently are looking to maybe move away from having betting sponsors in their games. Now remember that this is something that was said at TI8, the Dota 2 tournament, which is currently going on. They held a meeting with all the teams where they said, at least to some extent, you should try and stay away from sponsors that are betting companies. And we don't really know what was actually said at the meeting. It was reported widely, but the exact wording we don't really know. And whether it expands to CS, we don't know either. But that's the reason we brought you here, Scott, is because I saw a tweet you put out speculating that Valve might just be of they might just do it, let's say, game-wide. They might just do a whole ban of betting sponsors throughout all games they have. First off, Scott, what makes you really say that?
Well, I mean, before we even get to that, what is the deal? Like, I don't get a camera. I don't have face paint on, so therefore I'm not worthy of camera time. But like Pretty Boy Sponge, like, whatever. I get it. You know?
I'm sorry, man.
This
you know, like I got technology, I got cameras and stuff. Anyway, I get it. So yeah, I tweeted out because you kind of summed it. Wow, someone's really slamming the keyboard right now. What the?
Yeah, that's our producer.
Holy crap. Is that just in our ears, or can the world hear that?
Just
well, okay, that was freaking me out. I was watching the stream. So, yeah, so I tweeted out based on what everyone kind of saw. It's very vague so far, so we don't really know. But I guess in that TI meeting, players and the owners were kind of advised, Valve advised them gaming and gambling sponsorships, which a lot of them have, right? It's a very prevalent set of sponsors in a lot of esports, not just and then I tweeted about it, and then someone even reminded me that they had already told the Dota tournament organizers to stop with betting sponsorships, to do the majors. Valve on the Dota side, obviously, as you guys know, does a lot more hands-on major tournaments than they do Counter-Strike, right? They dip into our world twice a year, whereas they kind of are a focal part of running the Dota ecosystem, those majors.
I mean, you can go ahead and just look at how much Gabe Newell's actually, putting, how much work he's putting into that event. He's been there.
So what we don't know is obviously first off, the Dota teams and don't really know what that means for them. The ones that just signed new ones, the ones that have them already, because that hasn't been interviewed out, and probably after the international, Valve will clarify what they mean and who it affects. And then obviously all of us in Counter-Strike go, well, sometimes stuff that happens in Dota comes our way, sometimes it doesn't. Like obviously we don't have an international, we don't have a compendium or any sort of, crowdfunding for our majors in that sense. But what we do have is they ban for match fixing in Dota and Counter-Strike the same. They do something similar. So me being more cynical than optimistic, I was like, okay, are they going to say stuff to tournament organizers of Counter-Strike tournaments? Will that just be majors? Will they then say something to team owners? Because this is a revenue stream for owners, right? Which then pays players. So, and it's a big one, right? Just like it's a big one in real sports. So it could have a very big impact. And what, so very vague right now. We don't know what it's going to mean. But it could hit ESL, it could hit Face it can't hit you guys. I mean, you guys have betting sponsors, but you're a tertiary business around the game, so Valve really would have a hard time like telling you to stop taking advertising. Right?
In a way, it would be better for us. We just have more people knocking on our doors.
You might get more of the audience where it's available to be advertised. And again, so we don't know what Valve's going to do with it really. I guess that's kind of scary.
What makes you say that they might do it just throughout all their
games? Yeah, because my tweet was in the down the line of, I think that, and again, I speak for myself, right? Obviously, I'm involved with helping the players with the player association. This is not a player association issue. Players haven't talked about it. Again, eventually, players will probably have to come up with an education platform to educate other players about worrying about being match fixed and all those kind of things, right? Kind of to educate your pro player base on the pitfalls of it, right? Regular PAs have that in their sports because, again, it happens. So my thought process was, okay, Valve is probably just going to do a blanket. The concept is Valve's going to do a blanket no gambling sponsor ban. When I first tweeted, people were like, well, Scott, what about Betway? What about Pinnacle? What about the ones that are legal? That in the countries they're licensed, they have, Isle of Man or wherever they happen to be licensed, they're running as legal sports books for regular sports, for esports. What about those? Why are those bad, right? Versus like the bullshit ones we all know exist, right? And my thought was, Valve's not going to play police. They're just going to have a blanket policy that goes, you know what? We can't every month look at every new possible gaming sponsor for every team in the space and go, oh, yeah, they're legit. That website looks legit. They're in, they're out. I think they'll just go none of it, right? Because it'll be easier for them because they're not going to get in the business of policing if, again, when it comes to Counter-Strike, they start cracking, if they bring some of those same things they're saying in Dota to us. They have not done that yet. So, but I just think they won't like become the arbiter of what is a good gaming sponsorship versus a bad one. They'll just say, stay away from the category.
Wouldn't this kind of also mean that they don't have a sense of how important this thing is, because obviously, like you said, it's a big revenue generator for the whole scene. Let me point that to you, Striker. I mean, do you think that this could be something that Valve would do?
I mean, we still have to look at how the Dota Valve team and the CS:GO Valve team are different, right? Like Scott said at the start, we know that the CS:GO guys, the CS:GO Valve team is not as hands-on as the Dota 2 one. So, I mean, sure they could. I'm sure they could. They could definitely just tell teams, like, if you want to take part in the major, there have to be no betting sponsors. So they just have that power over teams and potentially over tournament organizers as well, just because they're using their license, right? So they have the capability of doing that. I'm not sure if they will, just because the CS:GO team really hasn't been that hands-on, but it is a potential issue, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Well, to answer your question, like I'm sure the Valve guys are well aware of how gambling and the various types of gambling, right? We're talking about like the ones that you bet on games, right? But there's also been gambling that uses their IP and the skins and roulettes and all that. That's all gambling, if you will. But I think we're talking about like betting, match betting, right? You're betting on the pros. And like you would at a sports book in Vegas. I think they're well aware, because when they started cracking down on the bullshit, if you will, and a lot of the online stuff, we've all seen a dramatic drop in stuff, right? User player hours are down because people aren't logging in to trade and do stuff. Little less people are watching in that regard. We've lost a chunk of gamblers who really aren't watching anymore because they can't gamble anymore, right? Because their avenues are kind of being closed off by Valve. Where I think it's different, and again, until we know what it means to Dota, then we can worry about what it means for Counter-Strike, right? Because I think, unlike how they basically run as two different companies when it comes to how they run their esports within Valve's ownership of Dota and Counter-Strike, I think this is on a legal level of the company. The policy they will set will be Valve legal. Remember, keep in mind, this is also a company that's being sued, right, for offering gambling to kids and all sorts of shit in their own right, right? They're having different countries say, yeah, those boxes that you drop where you buy a key, that's gambling in our country. You got to work on how that
The
works,
Dutch are really
right?
cracking down
Right,
on them.
right, and not just Valve's games, but the whole concept of is getting a free box really free? Is it gambling of some sort? Are we teaching? And what it all really comes down to is not if I, as a 52-year-old guy, can go to GGBet and properly make a bet, right? There is something to be said that gambling in itself is a vice. It is a vice piece of entertainment, just like drinking is, just like smoking is. And there are, in various countries, there is legislation about advertising those things. My country is a prime example of it. The Winston Cup was the most famous NASCAR race on the planet forever. Winston is a cigarette. They forced them to change the name of the circuit because too many kids who are also NASCAR fans, and yeah, kids don't go in and buy the cigarettes, but you're advertising too early to them. Gambling falls into that. Alcohol falls into that. You know, you see less and less TV ads of booze companies. It depends on the time of night. And again, all by country, all by region. Gambling falls into that, right? In our country especially, there's no gambling ads, but in Europe there are. There's no gambling on the front of our sports jerseys, but more than half the Premier League teams have a betting sponsor on the front of their jersey. Also very controversial right now because they're now hitting the same thing. Millions of dollars into the ecosystem, which is great for everybody. But are you advertising to kids and maybe you shouldn't, right? And so there, you Google that, you'll see there's people that are proponents for the Premier League money, and some of them saying, no, it's too much. You're like, now you've got 3 gambling sponsors on the shirt the kid's buying. Like, we don't need to shove. So I don't have a moral thing on it. If you're old enough to have a vice, and whether it's gambling, although it can be very addictive and you can lose your house, I'm all for it. So, but I think Valve's going to take this safety stance is what I'm saying. Like, because they're a game developer. Kids play their games. Kids watch others play their games. So let's just cut that category off. Pornography is cut off. Alcohol is cut off, right? So I think, and again, maybe I'm being more pessimistic, I think it's coming. I think they're going to say, if you want to be involved in our shit, and where we get lucky, again, double-edged sword, right? Where we get lucky in the Counter-Strike thing is they run 2 of our events. And earlier in your show, we've talked about how maybe the majors aren't that important as they used to be, whether it's the time they land or the prize money or the prestige, the roster locks, all these different things. Like, we've got a lot of big tournaments that are also as prestigious. So they enacting that in Dota and telling all the tournament organizers that make a lot more of their bread and butter, you can't take sponsorships, teams, you can't take sponsorships. It has a bigger impact on the ecosystem than twice a year in our world, right? That's 2 weekends, a little longer, right? But I'm just fearful that they will do it to stay safe, and they are a North American company, U.S.-based. And they're going to go, you know what? No gambling stuff. Now, will it go so far as when they give a license to ESL to run IEMs, right? The entire circuit that has nothing to do with a major unless they get one. Will they then put a caveat in there as license holder of our AP to use our game at all? You cannot do this. You cannot have teams do this. I don't know if they'll go that far. Again, what they do with Dota will probably really dictate what they then flip to us, I think, in this regard.
I think it's safe to say that the tournament organizers are looking at Valve and what they're doing and not copying it, but kind of taking it to them. I remember I talked to the CBO, co-founder of Faceit when I was in London for ECS, and he said, oh, we talked about the other kind of ethical rule, I guess they applied, the conflict of interest one. You can't own multiple teams and players can't have. And I remember them saying, well, we're already doing that. We're already looking at this. I mean, don't you think it's pretty safe to say that, okay, so if this is a move they make, we might as well just prepare for it if we want any kind of stake in, I mean, maybe doing a major down the line?
Yeah, it's really up to Valve to probably make us all feel better, or at least let us know the ball is dropping. And someone's like claiming my Premier League stats are false. I just Googled it the other day when I was looking it up. I thought I read between Tier 1 and Tier 2 in the top, it's like 60% have betting sponsors. Maybe not front shirt, but anyway, a lot of money in gambling and sports in Europe more than the States.
We get North and Navi just off the top of my head.
Oh, hey, Chad.
No, yeah, no, I don't mean I don't mean the esports has 60%. I mean Premier League football, right? Has a lot more gambling stuff. So yeah, I don't know if people will play it safe, even though it doesn't really, like, the rules written over here in the gray area. But I don't want to be in Valve's. It's just like how, to the point, like how many people didn't let the band players play, even though Valve said it only related to their major involvement, right? But everyone stayed away from letting them in. Again, I want Valve right after the international to make it clear to everybody, because again, this is, and again, I'm not anti-gambling. I mean, I stepped up several years ago about the anti-bullshit skin gambling, and a lot of kids like falling prey to it. But again, if you're old enough and you want to use a legit site, that is money, and it does grow a fandom in its own right. Like people, like it works in sports. A lot of people care more about sports because they put a little bit of money on the action, whether it's you and your buddy on the couch or in some official way, right? It does grow an engagement level. And so, like, that's good, I think. But we have a very, very, very young demographic, right? So then you just have to be leery of how you advertise to them. So maybe it's okay that NIP and everyone takes money, but maybe it turns into a nuance of where the logo shows up and when it can be showed up. You know, so maybe NIP has to roll in with a special jersey for the major, so they really can still take the money and kind of year-round be okay, but maybe there's some exceptions that have to be made. I don't know. But you can it gets down a really weird road. Like, are energy drinks bad for kids? Do we start taping off logos? Like, where is the moral arbiter supposed to be, right? And again, I'm not anti-gambling, and we all need the team owners to have as many revenue streams as possible, so they keep supporting our game, because we're not a Fortnite crazy game of the flavor of the month, and we'll never be again, right? We are just a rock steady esport, right? And so kind of we need all the help we can get in some regards. Yeah, that's my rant. Sorry.
That's fine.
I go on.
You go on. That's why we invited you, man.
I can put forward the question. So in theory, if Valve would say that we can't have gambling sponsors for esports team in CS, would that be something? I mean, since that money goes to the teams and then goes from the teams to the players, would the player association be, I don't know, interested in doing something against that, like putting forward anything to kind of dissuade Valve from doing it?
Good question.
Just to cut in here, because we need to say, Scott, that you're actually kind of a spokesperson for the CSPPA, the new player organization that around 100 players are part of now, just to preface that and your answer with that.
Yeah, I am an advisor, spokesperson for the board and for the association. So this particular topic, I will not be speaking on behalf of them because we have not spoken internally about this topic. To your point, though, I would think one way or another, let's say that Valve clarifies, and it actually clarifies in a positive way, that there can be gambling in our ecosystem, right? It can continue. And maybe it's limited to, maybe Valve says, you know what, we will keep an eye on it, and you have to be a real deal, right? You have to be licensed like a regular sports book in the world. And we'll monitor it. We'll do our due diligence, etc. Then I think what the player association would want to do would be internally figure out some education for the players of the association. So now that gambling is going to be free, like how not to, because Valve might also say players can't gamble. They've already said that about majors, right? You don't gamble on stuff. You don't bet on stuff if you're part of a team that's there, if you're one of the players that are there. So, but education, right? Because if you're going to allow the industry to exist in the ecosystem, you have to nod that there is the ability for match fixing, usually more from nefarious non-legalized ones maybe than the legalized ones. But so you'd still want to educate your player based on what to look out for if someone's trying to get you to throw a match. Right, so an education program, and then the opposite to your question, if they said, "Hey, y'all got to go," would we kind of figure out with our team owners how to say, "Yeah, but Valve, done right, we could support this, and here's why for the ecosystem it makes sense." Yeah, I could see again the players would have to vote this in, would want to put their voice towards that, regardless of what I said or Michael or anyone else that's involved that isn't a player. They would vote on their stance on it. They might all be like, "Fuck it." Owners figure out a different revenue stream. If that would be their stance, that would be their stance. But I would think that, again, if Valve drops the hammer, everybody in the ecosystem is going to have a stance, right? Because you are taking money out of tournament organizers' hands right now, team owners' hands, which, again, all trickles down to a player's salary, player's prize money, all those kind of things. So, yeah, that would be my take on it. We would definitely nod to it one way or another. I think we'd have to.
All right. Yeah, but my counter argument to all this, okay, so betting is so important to the scene is, aren't we at a place now where the game is consolidated even in some mainstream media areas that we can find other sponsors that aren't even close to having any ethical problems? Like, wouldn't it be just a vacuum that would automatically fill with new incoming companies that would like to sponsor this new and exciting sport, I guess?
Well, I mean, I don't think one necessarily relates to the other, right? Because Betway being a sponsor of a team doesn't stop Coca-Cola necessarily, unless there are mainstream brands that are in some sort of corporate morality do not want to be attached with a gambling brand, if you will. That would be a very case-by-case basis. So I think excluding a category is simply that. We're excluding a category that is very prevalent in sports, legal and illegal, all around the world, right? I mean, the biggest people that are fighting online gaming in my country are the people that own the casinos in my country, right? Because they don't own the online side of my country. So they're lobbying for more restrictions on everybody else because they want you to come to Vegas, right? Or they want you to come to Atlantic City. It's kind of weird. It's like, oh, so you want legislative morality, so like we can only be sinners in your country, in your city, right? Oh, I get it. Cool, right? You don't want anyone else to gamble. So I think I think you want both in a perfect world, but again, like there is a moral truth to gambling. It is easily addictive, especially when you start winning. And just like any other vice, you want to kind of keep kids away from it, And again, I'm not a goody two shoes. Again, full disclosure, I grew up in Nevada. I went to school in Las Vegas, so gambled at an early age, illegally in casinos, legally in casinos, have a great time doing it. And Nevada is a state that has no personal property tax for residents because of the gambling revenue. Like it does great for states, but gambling is a huge addiction, and people will lose their house and their kids' college funds. And like in some regards, it's worse than drugs, right? You OD on heroin, you're going to run out of money, you're going to start stealing some shit, and you're probably going to die. But gambling, like you stay cognizant enough to keep figuring out how to get money, right? And so it's its own, but again, it's a vice. And like I'm cool with vices, like legalize it, right? And tax it and give help to people if they fall in crisis. But the morality, that whole side of the world will come screaming that this is video games, this is kids, and what the hell are you all doing pitching gambling to kids, right? And I think that's where Valve goes, yeah, we don't need the category, right? Whereas the team is really, it's a huge category, right? I mean, tomorrow, another crypto... Yeah. Another crypto betting site's going to open, right? Gamers for gamers by gamers. It happens daily, right? So, but out of that crap is like good betting sites, right? And good things, but yeah.
I mean, teams generally struggle to monetize their fan base. And I mean, whatever betting site, whoever is betting on CS is to a degree a fan of CS, maybe not a fan of a certain team. So in a way that is a revenue stream of getting money from fans through betting companies back to the organizations. So that's something good in a way. That's something that we definitely would be losing. So back to Yossarian's question, when you mentioned that we could maybe just get other sponsors, you could, but you can't get back what you lost.
Yeah, and it's a different slice, right? And again, it's unfortunate that it has this kind of moral attachment to it. And again, it has it in the real world with shit on TV because kids watch TV. So different countries have different laws, and there is starting to be some pushback on some of the Euro, because again, in the States we don't have it. It's not on our jerseys. It's not really shown up. There was where it all blew up in the States was all the fantasy stuff, right? Fantasy was everywhere. Fantasy was one of the biggest sponsors of the NFL for a couple of years, right? They went nuts. Then the government went, this is kind of like gambling, so it's going to fall under our gambling laws, and now all that money's gone away real quick, right? That money snuck into esports really quick and then left really quick because, again, it all got kind of kiboshed by our legislation. And so, again, I think it's a market that is like, oh, we don't want to lose it. And again, I talk to team owners more and more these days, and again, this game, esports as a whole, different world necessarily, but Counter-Strike is not the most brand-safe game. Again, it's not the flavor of the month. It's not Dota, where it has the international, it has this thing once a year that makes everyone just like go, what? How much? So we just have our thing, right? And our thing's been going on since 1998 or whatever, right? So it's a cool thing. It's a sustainable thing. The gameplay is solid. The mechanics of the esport of watching it and showing it, like it's obviously proven to be a beautiful platform to watch people play a video game. But it's terrorists versus counter-terrorists. And like Anders has recently brought up that debate of, are we losing something because of this, terrorist, anti-terrorist like world we live in? And talking to some team owners, more North American ones, the European ones, they have said to me, it's not brand safe. We'll get some brands that go, we love everything you do, but we don't want our shirt, our logo on the Counter-Strike jerseys because the terrorist, counter-terrorist thing. Right? And again, this is the kind of brand that loves an Overwatch, loves a League of Legends, even loves a Dota because it's more fantasy and not real, not rooted in this like, oh shit, like. In Germany, you got to turn the blood off, right? Like, you got to turn the blood green in Germany, for Christ's sake, right? So we've already got these inherent challenges to this glorious game of ours, right? So now you're taking away one revenue stream that loves our game, right? These betting sites love Counter-Strike because, again, the more a game is established, the better odds they can give, the better they can track odds so they can make good money, right? Because it's all established like sports, right? It fits right into the same thing. But, man... I'm just fearful, again, not for it, but fearful that they're just going to err on the side of keep it away from kids, therefore none of it.
Right? Before Valve banned CSGO because it's a violent game.
I don't know. I don't know if Valve will ever. Yeah, I don't know if Valve will ever do it, and I don't know if they'll ever like change it to offense. Like CGS, those of you that remember CGS, they changed it. It was offense versus defense, and you were planting the device. They wouldn't say bomb, wouldn't say terrorist or counter-terrorist.
We had the whole gameplay in third person.
God damn it, Sponge, man. I know.
Jesus.
We don't want to show him shooting him in the face. Oh, really? Oh, can you just pick a different game at this point, please? Yeah. So, it would kind of be a shame to lose it because again, I'm against the shady ones because the shady ones prey on the kids, right? And the T Martins and the fucking Phantom Lords that are actually scamming. Like to me, I don't even put those like Betway. Taking odds on a game and all that other shit to me is just other shit, right? I'm worried about the legitimate betways and the ones that are coming like the betways that like take their millions elsewhere. And they'll just take them to different esports, right? Because not everyone's going to be like Valve, right? So all of a sudden, like Rocket League gets all the goddamn gambling money or something. Who knows?
Don't even say it. To round out this discussion is a nice little comment from Candy Mao. Dude, just change character models to Teletubbies. Pretty great. So Scott Sir Scoots, thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Hey, no worries, man.
Yeah, I'm calling in from Phoenix, Arizona. Next time we'll put your face on too, because
yeah, there you go. And I'm glad you guys are doing the show. I mean, obviously, you guys are a bedrock of what we're all talking about. You guys have been doing.
Thank you.
Nice to see you guys transforming a little bit, doing a little different content out of the norm. Are any plans to do anything like this? Like I haven't seen any earlier shows, like live from your events, since you have some of your guys there. Would you turn this into like event coverage type stuff, or is it just going to be like a weekly?
Let's see what happens once the major that's like over 3 weeks long actually goes to
We'll see you there live, is what you're saying. Okay,
we'll probably have to do something.
Spoiled all your announcements. There you go. Announcement of announcement. Half-Life TV live from the major.
Confirmed.
This is where you put the HLTV Confirmed emote, I guess. Be sure, guys, to follow Scott on Sir Scoots. It's not on the screen right now. If it doesn't get there before he leaves, then be sure to go to his Twitter account to follow him. That is where you can pick up stuff like this. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thanks, Harvey.
Okay, so Chad, I know you were still in there, and thanks for that. Sorry we had to cut you out. Oh, did you try to remove the makeup you have?
No. Someone for some reason is ringing my doorbell. I don't know if there's anybody downstairs or not. I didn't order food or anything, and it's almost 10 o'clock at night.
I mean, you were eating when we got on, so I suppose it's not that.
And it's not Henry, as he's out at the moment.
It's someone coming to capture you for Overwatch analysis, I guess.
Well, see, this was my whole spiel. I thought I would wear Overwatch face paint so that they would one day hire me. They can message me on my phone if they're downstairs and they know me. If you're downstairs right now and you're at my apartment, you're going to have to message me on WhatsApp if you need me to open the door.
Someone saw the stream and kind of figured out where you live.
I put enough pictures out there.
I mean, we have
maybe the map was too precise.
Yeah, maybe it's too precise. That actually, someone clicked that and figured out his coordinates. Anyway, let's move on to our next segment here. We have Counter-Strike coming up. That there will be something at least happening after many weeks of a break. It's not the biggest. It's not the biggest event ever. It's the SoTech Cup Masters 2018 Grand Finals, and I have actually the team list on our event page over here. Let's if we can see that. We'll be diving into who we think are going to win, what's going to happen with this, because for a lot of us, it's going to be exciting to have some CS before the bigger events of DreamHack Stockholm and also the major kind of kicks off. This is a nice little one to sort of seek us into that. So for teams, we have Ghost, MNA, MVP, the Koreans, Kinguin, then Flash, formerly VG Flash, made in Brazil, Optic, Tyloo, and Virtus Pro are coming in. It's a simple single elimination 8-team bracket. Guys, to start off, I guess Sponge, since you were left out, I want to start with you. What do you think is an interesting storylines for this? I mean, albeit kind of tiny event.
I think we kind of have to quickly wade through the bullshit. There's only two actual teams at this entire tournament, and that's Optic and MIBR. Obviously, Optic on the upward climb ever since this roster's come together. Ah?
Not Tyloo.
Yeah, not Tyloo.
Who?
Tyloo, the Chinese team.
One more time?
Tyloo.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so there's two teams in this tournament, MIBR and Optic.
I was thinking my internet was dying again. So
no. I was just trolling you. But Optic, obviously interesting because of the whole coming together of like the snappy Yugi plus the likes of HLTV Config, and then obviously Gade. I'm saying it wrong. I know that you Danes love to swallow the D, and you say like
what?
You say like Gil, like Gade is meant to be pronounced like Gil or something dumb in Danish. Anyway.
Seriously?
Let's not go into that. It's a very difficult phonetic sound that only we make. So don't even try.
Yeah, no, you have a good point, and I'm not going to ever attempt some. It took me long enough to do Uldense, which is still apparently wrong. Long story short, so there's two teams at this entire tournament, and the Optic one is because they're on the uphill climb, and I think they can be better than the north of the world and potentially be the second best team in all of Denmark. I want to see how they're trending and how Snappy's kind of getting to use some really cool tools, because I think having Yugi and Config the team is something which he can build off of and have, some really strong firepower. And then it's obviously MIBR with Yanko as the coach. Now, Yanko's been put in a bit of an awkward position coming in as a coach, right, to this team with Tarek and Stewie added. And this is kind of something we're going to have to work towards or work through, I think, within the timeline. So obviously we know that they wanted to get rid of Taco and Bolts. That happened after a slow process, so getting Stewie added in individually as the only English speaker would have proven such a huge issue for him early. I was sitting in shuttles with them, and the rest of them are speaking Portuguese while he's speaking, he's just sitting there. So like these issues at the time were probably there in the early days. Then obviously now having Tarek in the roster, they've got two guys who are speaking English, so now everybody's probably speaking English with Yanko in the team as well. Those should be the top two for the tournament. If you want to look at, who can disappoint the least, then you look to the Tyloos of the world. You go, hey, VP, how are you going to do with Snatchy? You've just moved Pasha off of his role that he's played now for the last 5 years of his career and put a new young gun in there. So is your most consistent player of the last couple of years now going to completely drop off the face of the earth? That's the storyline. Kinguin, can they continue to be average? Probably. Flash, can they continue to never do anything? MVP, same story as them. Ghost, how long until these guys aren't a roster anymore? Literally two teams this entire tournament. The MIBR one is the most juicy storyline going into the major, I think. But for Zotac Cup, MIBR and Optic should be the grand final unless something tragic happens.
So who wants to weigh in on this? Are you guys feeling the same? Only two teams? You guys want to talk about Tyloo, right?
I mean, I think it's fair to give Tyloo somewhat of a shot, because even though like their communication or anything that I've seen about them doesn't really make sense, but it somehow is kind of working. So. And this is not a tournament where they have all the best teams and that they're gonna just run into some, I don't know, phase and just bomb out quickly, right? So this is a tournament where they could potentially take somebody like MIBR, who clearly are not an elite tier team just yet. So they could take them off guard. But yeah, like Chad said, the MIBR and Optic are the two biggest names in this. And I have to agree with that. But I mean, there's also VP that's at least going to be interesting in with their recent edition Snatchy. So that's something that I'm going to be looking into as well when I watch it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to take into account that it's a single elimination best of 3. So
yeah.
If you fail something, you don't really get a good look into anyone. If you have a bad game, you have a bad game, you're out. About the Tyloo MIBR thing, I just feel like they're gonna potentially meet in the semifinal if they beat who they should beat, I guess.
Yeah.
And then it's just, is MIBR gonna play good? If they play up to anywhere near their level, they should beat Tyloo, and that's, I guess, a clear cut thing. But then if they're not playing good, that's the kind of the showing that we'll see here, and then see it moving on towards Stockholm and the major. But yeah, they should finally be able to get over the hurdle and get the title here. Like similarly to the Portuguese event that they won, that only had Hellraisers or something like that.
But that's the thing, right? Like MIBR can't win in this scenario. Like they're going to win the tournament. People are going to say, well, they should have won the tournament. It doesn't really matter for the major almost. It doesn't mean anything. But if they lose, then obviously people will say, oh, well, they're not going to do anything at the major. So this is a tough one for MIBR. They just have to win it. Like I feel like if they don't, they're just going to, I don't know, dig a hole for themselves.
I think the suit's gonna do it, honestly. I don't know
Oh,
since
the suit.
since Janko joined. Let's just take a look at this man. I mean, and you can help us with this chat, right? If this is not the suit of a winning man, I don't know what is. Check it out.
So look, as you guys are well aware, I don't even iron my clothes for broadcast. So I would like it if Yanko wears a suit while coaching. That would be badass as anything. I reckon that'd be sick. I know some of us may remember Jason Lake standing behind the Complexity guys back in the day. I thought that was a really cool thing. But I think that what Yanko probably brings to this team, if we want to be a little bit, truthful about it, is a different leadership person. So Fallen has been doing this for so long, and eventually the lines become blurred. I was an in-game leader for many years, and the lines become blurred between you being the hype guy, the in-game leader coming up with the strategies, the in-game leader leading the team, the in-game leader leading the team outside of in-game activities. You're the face of the team, you're this, you're that, and eventually like you have arguments, there's falling outs, there's this, there's that, and the lines get blurred, and maybe the respect level starts to drop off. With Yanko coming in, it means that Fallen can kind of feed his mantra through Yanko, or they can come up with one together, and then that way they can reinstill it to the team, because Fallen for a long period of time was the man doing that, and then when they dropped off, when these falling outs kind of happened, when these roster change things were here, there, and everywhere for this team, I think they lost their identity a bit, and I think Yanko coming in can give them a new one, or at least reinstill what they had before and point them back in the right direction. So
I think it's pretty clear that's actually what he's trying to do. If you read our interview with him, right? I want them to have a certain culture.
Yep.
And also, I think he talks about what you're saying also with all the different IGLing they've had. I remember, Prof, when you were in IEM, I think you were in Australia, right, in Sydney, when Cold Zero dropped the bomb, or was that another event? I don't remember.
Yeah, that was in Sydney when they bombed out of the groups.
And I remember when you posted in our work chat. So guys, I guess Cold Zero just told me he's gonna IGL. And everyone was like, "What the hell? What the hell's going on?"
Yeah, that's one of those things that when he said it to me, I'm like, okay, can you just repeat what you said? You just want to be like 100% sure before you post that, just to be safe. And it's like, yeah, I'll be in game leading. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. They're in dire straits right now. They're pretty desperate. So yeah, it didn't last long, but it was a good news.
And then they also had S2.E leading on some maps when he joined, right? It was quite.
I mean, it was just chaotic. We had no idea who was leading on what, and so they just really had no identity whatsoever. So I feel like this is a step in the right direction, at least. I'm not going to say that this is going to work out with YNK. I mean, potentially not even by any of his fault, really. Could just be the team that is beyond repair. But we don't know, right? We just don't know. We're going to have to see. And this is like the first tournament that we're going to witness this, and whether it kind of works. But like I said, like in this scenario, MIBR just have to win, because if they don't, they're just going to get bashed. So this is a tough one. We're just going to have to wait for the next tournaments, Stockholm and the major, to actually see. But we'll be able to hopefully see some changes that YNK has kind of brought up on the team over the past couple of weeks.
Speaking of team chemistry, there's just one team I want to also take a look at. That's at Zotac that I'm, I guess, not looking forward to seeing, not in that sense, but just what they're going to do from now on. Flash from China. So they were VG Flash, because they fused with VG Gaming to make a Chinese super team. I think that's 6 months back or so. And they moved. They actually moved to new training facilities at VG Gaming, as far as I know. So we got the news that they were splitting up, that they had stopped, I think, ceased cooperation or something with VG Gaming, and they're going to be named as Flash from now on. And they cited team chemistry problems as the reason for splitting up. But the funny thing is that the core of Flash then took on 2 people from the same team on loan. So the 5-man team is exactly the same as they had chemistry issues with. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how they're going to solve that down the line. I mean, if they can do like anything at this tournament.
And the worst thing is they did absolutely nothing since they brought the team together. And on paper, they're pretty good players. They did absolutely nothing. I mean, when you saw it and you know that Tailu has all of these communication issues, this and that, and you see this team, it's like, okay, they can contest maybe for the best Chinese team. Wasn't even close. They didn't qualify for anything, even for these tournaments that have multiple Asian slots, literally nothing. So even here they were invited. So I literally don't expect anything from them at all.
So, Sponge, you were talking a little bit about Optic. Gale is the correct way to say it, actually. He's from the same city as I am.
What?
Yeah.
Isn't it dumb? They're like, I know that they have potatoes in their mouths when they speak and stuff, but the fact that the letter is completely removed from the pronunciation of the word is fucking insanity. Anyway, that's not the important part.
No,
Where
the
are we going
important
with
part
this?
is actually the question from WiggleX02. You wanted to know, do you think that Optic could be a tier 1 team with their current lineup? If no, what should they do? I mean, this is a great one because there are so many great personalities and talents in that team. Personally had a long talk with their coach Rogga about what it's going to take for them when they first started out. And what he pointed out was, we need a strong leader. And he obviously thought he could be that. We need that because what you saw on Optic in NA, what we talked about earlier in the stream, they need strong leaders because eventually these players they can't be. I mean, their talent has to be guided in some way, right? Or you'll see troubles with it. What do you think, Chad, about this?
Can we do a thing? Can you click on the lovely HLTV.org logo at the top left of the screen there, take us back to that homepage? Is this possible? All right. And then what I want you to do is navigate down the left-hand side of the page to the top, the world ranking list. And I would like you to open that up full screen for everybody at home, just so they can really grasp
By the
this.
way, we have a new design for everyone to see.
Slightly.
Slightly.
Just it's little bits and pieces.
You can middle click now?
I'm on this website's in my top 3 of rotation of things to check every morning when I wake up. But, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, look at this list. I want you to just really look at this list. If we're going to consider the top 10 teams in the world to be tier 1, there are probably about 3 teams in the top 10 right now who could easily be displaced from that top 10. You look at Optic in 15th position right now. There's no reason they can't be better than North, NRG, or Big. Right? There's no reason they can't be better than those teams at all. So to say that say Optic in this iteration could be a tier 1 team, and if we're going to consider tier 1 to be top 10 in the world, 100%. Whether they can compete with the big dogs, the Astralises, the Navis, the Liquids, the Phases, the Mouse Sports, that's a different kettle of fish, but they can definitely be a top 10 team looking at these rankings right now.
How, though?
How? Well, how many tournaments have these guys played? They haven't been formed for very long. They also came together as a squad who weren't getting invitations to a lot of things. People have to understand how cyclical this is. If they have one tournament where they place within the top 4, they're going to be getting invited to the next tier 1 tournament, especially if we're talking in the realms of the MTG, ESL/DreamHack circuits, right? Right now they're still out there fucking pillaging for fucking berries off trees, playing at DreamHack Opens, right? They're not getting invited to the big tournaments. They're still having to fight their way up, and they're having decent results. They've qualified for the major. They just need to get past this first stage at the major, and that's the initial nod in. That's the, hey, welcome to the big boys leagues. You can come to our tournaments now. They've only come together in a short period of time, right? You think about where Heroic was when Snappy and Co were kind of together at that point. They're around a similar point, and I think Optic has more growth than what that Heroic roster could have possibly done.
Mm-hmm. And obviously you're talking about some of the big talents on the team, like Yugi, Config, players like that, but then you have like Snappy, Cajun B, and then unproven guy maybe still in Gale. Do you think that that's enough?
Please stop. Please stop.
Do you want me to not say that?
Yeah,
is this the correct way?
Nobody calls him that way. Just don't pull an Anders, please.
Gale.
What's wrong?
Don't pull an Anders who's been saying like Zipex is actually called Zipnex, even though Zipex actually himself says it's Zipex, and we started calling Zipex Zipnex just because of that. Don't do that,
guys. This is my stream, okay? So this is the way it's going to be. Okay, so Gate then. Back to my question. What do you think? What do you think it'll take from like each of these players? Namingly a player like this guy.
If I can interject, I mean, continuing on what Sponge said about Heroic comparing him with Optic, if you take Snappy as the leader, I think he has a lot more with this team, and if he doesn't do a lot more with this team, it will be kind of disappointing. Kind of be an unraveling of him as he has this kind of pedigree of a very good in-game leader that never has good players. I think he has good players now, like with Yugi and Config, and Cajun B has actually been playing very, very well now that he's not opping anymore. So I think that three alone, and Gade has been showing, the minor for him was pretty good. So all of that is like pretty good tools. So it then goes down to Snappy to actually make something work, to make a big result, and then as Sponge said, get those constant invites. That's something that back when he was playing with Heroic, he never got, and I know that he was been even publicly critical about some of the things and how they work regarding invites.
All right, so let's go back to the actual starting point of this conversation, which is the Sodak Cup. I guess it's not really a secret that you guys think MIBR is going to win it. I'm going to be on. Yeah. I think once we start looking at the odds for that, they're pretty low as well. Anything else you want to add before we go to the next segment?
Just quickly, I think they should win it. I don't think they will win it.
Interesting.
That's the difference. I don't know. If you look at the bracket, it should be a pretty easy run, right? But because it is the whole single limb type thing, they need to be on their A game from the get-go. So I don't know if they're going to want to show everything they have leading into this run, or if they're just going to try and, if it was me, I would try and iron out the kinks of the basics of the communication, doing your defaults, and having your I guess protocols or contingencies in place, so the basic levels of Counter-Strike, as opposed to using all of your strategies, all of your next level stuff. So if they get like back against the wall against a team like Optic in the grand final, Optic are going to do everything to win, where I think MIBR maybe won't be willing. I don't know, that sounds dumb because everyone plays to win, but maybe they won't put their foot on the gas.
I also don't think MIBR are the type of the team that would necessarily do this, just because we've seen them play these lower tier tournaments for such a long time, and they actually use them to practice and then to figure out if things are actually working in official matches and stuff. So I feel like MIBR is not the team to kind of, I don't know, to use the stupid excuse safe strats. I feel like they're just gonna do whatever they've practiced over the past couple of weeks, really.
All right, so I guess we can close the book on that one.
I mean, just one thing actually we didn't consider or talk about was Ghost and the change to Crystal, or like at least the standing situation or the tryout or whatever it is supposed to be. Just because I feel like that's a little bit awkward, just from the roles perspective. I'm not sure how this makes sense to them.
Not even on. He's not.
Well, yeah, just because he's basically like a stand-in, but they also said that if by these couple of events that he's going to play with Ghost, he actually fits, then they're going to keep him. That it's a tryout or whatever. So
the situation was a weird one, right? In Imperial. So first they wanted to build around him, then they didn't want to, then they wanted to again, and now he's out. So it's definitely interesting what will happen when he goes to NA, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess he kind of fits like the support role in this team or something like that. That's the idea, with Steel being the in-game leader, or maybe Steel doesn't want the in-game lead. He's never, I mean, in the past he wasn't an in-game leader type, more than someone that kind of knows about the game and then leads because no one else wants to do it. So I don't know if anything changed in that regard. I think he still wants the in-game lead, so probably Crystal just being a support-ish European experienced guy that comes in and does whatever. But yeah, the question is then the other three players, that is Usta, Sabrosa, and Wardell. Do they have any firepower, and can they hold their own against whoever? Because when I've been seeing them play good, it's actually been Steel top fragging, which is kind of, I don't know, depressing in a way.
Right, so let's say that was that for our preview for Sotak, but let's keep on talking about it though, because guys close out at least our planned topics, let's put our money where our mouth is. We actually, now that we talk so much about who's going to win or who should and who can do what, let's try and get some skin in the game about this. So what we did was we made some betting slips on GGBet. We started out with a set amount of money, and we'll try to do each week a slip and then see down the line who can actually who benefit most from the knowledge that we have about CSGO. Of course, to preface this, we'll say you should bet responsibly, and that if you need to seek help, you should of course do so. This is our little competition, guys. Sponge, you're not going to be getting in on this, unfortunately, but you can tell us about how stupid we were with our slips. Let's see, let's start with yours. So we had the opportunity to bet on the total winner, and then the matches that are coming up for the first match in a couple of days.
Honestly, I didn't bet on the winner though. I just bet on a combination.
No,
of
just
things.
me.
And I also forgot what I bet on because it happened this morning. I need to look at it. Okay, so yeah, I picked a couple of things, and of course it's easy to pick stuff when it's not betting with your own money, so I don't care if I lose. So I think I put like 50 euros and the winning is 180 or something like that. I need to recheck. I'll check that later and tell you again. So yeah, I'll just start reading and telling why I did this in a kind of a prediction / betting odds involved way. So I think the first pick is just Tyloo against Kingwin, and it's a default bet, and 1.4 on Tyloo. I think it's like a decent pick for that for those odds. And then Virtus Pro against MVP PK, it was 1.73 odds for Virtus Pro to not win 2-0. I think MVP PK with Minik Seta, their new guy that came in, I think he's the upper instead of HSK. They've been playing pretty well, and they almost beat Virtus Pro, I think, back in the Star Series a long while ago that was now. But they're a decent team, and I think that Virtus Pro can lose a map against them, and that's it, more or less. What do I have? MIBR versus Flash. As I said before, Flash is not a team I have any trust in, so just went for a 2-0 for MIBR. And lastly, a totally random bet, which is that Optic will win the second pistol round of the first map against Ghost. And to do this, I just went into the pistol round stats on our site. Optic has good pistol round stats, and Ghost has bad pistol round stats. And I said, okay, this is what I'm going for.
That's certainly a pretty easy way to do it, I guess.
Yeah, please don't copy this and then blame me for your loss, because I'm very bad at betting.
You really should.
I never win anything.
You really should. All right, so to take a look at mine, I kind of went. Well, this is a small event, and the first matchups are pretty fun. So one of them, at least, is should be pretty much of a walkover, especially the first one. So I mean, it might be versus Flash, the second one on my slip. So I thought I'd go 2-0. I think none of the first ones are going to go to 3 maps. So I said Tyloo to win 2-0 versus Kingwin, and also MIBR to beat Flash 2-0 in maps. To make it a little bit more fun, I kind of wanted to spin around on what you were talking about, Sponge, with Optic and how good they can be. I like my man Config to come out swinging. So I think they might go crazy in the first game against Ghost. Obviously, they're going to win it, but I set it to that they were going to win the first map with a round handicap. So they'll win with more than 4.5 maps, including overtime. I think that one's pretty solid at 1.46. And then I simply put Virtus Pro as the winner of the MVP PK. I don't really have much insight to that. I'm anxious to see Snatchy come on, but I'm not certain enough that I'm going to put them at 2-0. So
I mean,
that's
it's happened before that VP lost to MVP PK. It was at Star Series season 4, if I.
It actually happened there. Yeah, I thought it was overtime.
No, yeah, it was. It was a super close match, wasn't it? Or maybe they didn't lose in the end. I'm not sure.
I think VP won in.
It was on Nuke,
Oh yeah,
right?
but it was super close. It was 3 maps, and on Nuke, I think VP actually won in overtime. You're right.
And it was a 2v5 or.
I don't remember that.
Don't talk down my bet, guys. This is gonna happen.
Sorry, man.
So for this one, I ended up with a combo of I think around 6 odd 6. So we'll see how that works. Probably gonna win. Not like unlike you. Let's see. So Striker, now this is the time where you come in and you do the perfect one.
Yeah, right. Well, I didn't do the combo because I pussied out and I do the singles. Mainly because I wanted to pick the tournament winner, which I went for an MIBR.
What even
Just feel like
are the odds for MIBR? I can't see anything.
1.9. 1.9 odds for MIBR to win the whole tournament, which, to be fair, is relatively low for a tournament winner. But I mean, I just couldn't put it on anything else, on anybody else, really. I don't believe in anybody else enough to kind of put my money where my mouth is. And in terms of the first matches, I actually went for Tyloo versus Kinguin. I just put it on Tyloo and the same thing with VP against MVP PK because they just had relatively good odds, 1.28 and 1.4. But with the Optic and Ghost and MIBR and Flash, I think there was something like 1.05 on Optic and 1.1 on MIBR. So I felt like it wasn't really worth it to bet on the result of the match. So I just went with the score, which was 2-0 for Optic versus Ghost. I just feel like Optic have a solid enough map pool to beat a team like Ghost, and the only map that they don't really play well is Dust 2, which Ghost also doesn't play well because they lost like something like 3 matches and all of them were very one-sided.
You
on
went
Dust
into
2.
the map vetoes. You went
Yeah.
that deep.
Yeah.
Expected from tryhard Striker.
And MIBR at Flash. I like you. I just don't believe in Flash at all. So I just went with a 2-0 for MIBR, and I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory.
All right. So Sponge, what do you think? Who's got it?
Who do I think is going to make the most money?
Yeah.
You guys have combos that I'm
Well,
good at.
here's
I'm
the
just
problem.
like,
Yeah, so Striker has a chance of actually winning something, whereas you guys are relying on a lot to come through here. So
no, especially proud for this second
Yeah.
pistol round winner.
I like it though. When I gamble on sports, I always gamble on dumb shit like in UFC, like are they going to touch gloves or whatever, like that kind of dumb. That's the stuff that gets me going.
Is Config gonna flame anyone in the chat? I'd like to bet on that.
I think Lars could have be on here to actually win his multi. We call them multis in Australia. But I think he could be on to actually win that. That's a pretty decent little. It doesn't actually have the tally here of how much you're going to make altogether, but I think that he could actually win his multi bet.
Yeah, this is actually like the highest like multiplier or whatever. However it's called.
Yeah.
I'm expert on these terms.
I would go out to win 158 euros.
Okay, well you didn't spend enough money then. You got to go big or go home. But I like the picks you've gone for. I think that there's a high percentage chance of all of those being converted. The Tyloo vs Kinguin is probably the riskiest for the 2-0, I would say, out of all those.
All right, so we'll revisit this and we'll see down the line who actually ends up making the most money. We'll have to set some kind of deadline for when we tally it all up, and then eventually one of us will go bet it all in the last one, right?
What are we gonna do with the winnings? That's the real question.
Yeah, it definitely is. Maybe we'll do something with that. We'll donate. Sponge, what do you think? If you come on, we can donate to you. Have your personal makeup artist come and face paint you whatever Overwatch character you like, huh?
Look, I can get her on the phone. We can suss out the cost, and if we have enough money, we can do it live. We can make it happen. We can definitely get some stuff on my face live. That sounds wrong. Makeup on my face live.
For anyone wondering, yes, he is cosplaying or were as an Overwatch character coming from Gamescom in Cologne. Thanks guys, everyone, for all your questions in the chat. If you have some final ones that you want to ask the panel, please bring them on now. We've had a lot of good ones. I'm sure, probably pretty certain that we had some we didn't answer. We skipped one with the IEM Shanghai MVP being picked out, so sorry about that. Please also leave your feedback in the comments. There's also going to be a VOD on this up on Twitch here, so you can also leave your comments in there. Let us know what you think. We're on Twitter as well. Let us know, how do you like this new format, this live format, and do you have any suggestions to make it even better? Then please send them our way.
Also, send in your thoughts on Striker's shirt. It's been a divisive topic before we went live. Thank you.
It was your topic. Nobody else talked about it.
I was
Divisive
pretty sure
enough
I
for
was
me.
gonna have the widest collar on, but you have me beat
Nope.
by like miles. We should have Yanko come on here and give us style tips. I think actually we probably could benefit from that.
I'm just like Sponge. I just don't like ironing out anything. So
Okay, so let's take a few questions before we round it out. Oh, this is nice. Okay, which Overwatch character is that now, Sponge?
This is Hawaiian Diva when she goes down to a party at the beach. So she's getting a real good time out there,
Alright.
just feeling real summery, getting the vibe.
looks like more like a Pokemon or something.
Okay, let's take a question here from Wiggle. Do you think Snicko is going to be part of the full lineup once everything is settled in? I know that some of us kind of tried talking to him about what it's going to be once he was going to LA to boot camp with the guys. Prof, what do you think about that?
I don't know, since they signed the Golden and they didn't sign him, feels like no, and especially as we talked before, that whole team seems ready for a deep makeover. So I don't think he'll be signing the Cloud9 unless something great happens at the major. No.
What do you think, Striker?
As much as I love Sticko and his personality, I feel like he's just not going to fit in Cloud9, and so like I don't see him staying on the team, especially with Golden. If he stays there, then you just do have to look at the firepower and how much they have. They would just have to have like 3 really good fraggers to kind of make up for it, and have those two as kind of like supportive players.
If they have the 2 of them, then Skadul has to go. Or
yeah,
I mean,
pretty much.
Someone will say that he can play great, but maybe he can. But from what we saw,
He's not stable. He's not. That's the
year
issue.
and a half, there is no signs of that. So.
So Sponge, I guess this one's also for you, especially since you have history in the team. Do you think JKM has successfully revived his career in Renegades and proved that he can be a tier 1 player?
I was getting ready to answer the Cloud9 question, and what I had done was I had come up with a cross for no. And then I had also you can't see it, it's too fucking bright.
We can.
It's good.
And then I'd done a tick for like yes, I agree. But then you asked me a question where the answer is maybe, and I don't know if like this comes down to the realms of, hey, where do we qualify a player like that? When Jacob plays against the lower opponents, like the North Americans and the Asians, he would have absolutely no respect for them, and that's why I think that he would just destroy them. Competing on a consistent basis within a top 5 team in the world, I think that's a very tough feat to achieve. Do I think he has the pedigree to do it? Yes. Do I think right now I'm still not sold on that, but I think he's a very good player. So just a top 5 team in the world, there's not much wiggle room at that end of things at the moment, just to be completely and utterly honest about the situation. Good player,
Fun
top
fact.
5 in the world, questionable.
If you watch the Vox seminar to Katowice, the movie, you know, that Maku made, Sponge.
Yeah.
Remember that? And
I've watched it a few times.
Then there's one cut when they go to the crowd, and then the crowd, you see, like in the front row, it's Asilian, Nothing, and Hunde, and like 2 rows behind them is Jakim with Zevis, I think. And that was just like a fun fact that I had. And then he joined the Renegades.
I only look at the front
later.
row. I only look at people in the front row. So I haven't looked past. I'll have to when I rewatch the video. It's quite emotional for me. I watch the video and I go, this is what it was like before people started sending me death threats on Facebook. And that's when Counter-Strike was still fun. But no, I'll have to go back and watch that, see Jacob in there and having a good time. But yeah, I think, you know, he's definitely a very good Counter-Strike player.
All right, so let's take the last question here. This might be a bigger one, but it's definitely an interesting one, and I think 2 teams that we haven't talked about at all, almost, tonight. What will it take Liquid to finally be able to beat Astralis, Expert, 7 Thief? And obviously this is a reference to the 2 teams just ending up in the grand finals of all the events. I remember I tweeted out that it's probably the major is just going to be Astralis and Liquid going up against each other in the BO21, right? Because they're going to meet each other over and over again. Prof, what's your take on that?
I feel like I talked about this like 10 times before, but maybe I didn't. They're just two teams with a kind of similar style, but Astralis is better in everything, and they have Device, who's a established AWPer, while Liquid doesn't have an AWPer. I mean, they have Nitro, who's okay, but that's it. And then when you put two teams like that against each other, it looks normal to have Astralis winning every time, and then maybe Liquid winning the odd game or something like that. I know they've been having a lot of issues with travel, fatigue, players being sick, other problems, blah, blah. And they attended a lot of events, unlike Astralis. So their kind of plan was to avoid a few events, and they did that by skipping Zotac in Stockholm and going straight to the major. So maybe that's their solution. I mean, that is their kind of solution or attempt to solve the problem of losing to Astralis. But I'm not sure that is going to be enough.
Anyone else to weigh in on that one?
I have to agree with what Prop said. I just feel like, I mean, especially when you put them up against Astralis, it's just, I mean, just look at how much problems everybody has against them. I mean, recently we've seen Navi kind of try to go up against them, but like pretty much everybody else has consistently been failing. So, I mean, Liquid, like Prop said, have a relatively similar style, have a lot of the same kind of it's the same concoction, just with differently skilled players. So, or like a similar one. So I just feel like Prop said, it's Navi's just gonna win most of the time, at least whenever they're on form.
All right. So last answer and the last question here, Chad. What do you think? Do you agree with the guys here?
I think for Liquid to beat Astralis would have to drop the ball in sense of be complacent and not do their homework and research properly, and not treat Liquid with respect. I think pound for pound, Astralis have them covered. I think strategy-wise, Astralis have them covered, and I think just their general structure of the organization and team, Astralis have Liquid covered. So yeah, I think it would have to be Astralis dropping the ball to lose against Liquid.
All right, thanks for the last question that we got in here. Remember to always leave several ones. We'll see if we can maybe take them next time we do a show, which is hopefully next week. Thanks for everyone in the chat. I know we've had some pretty good viewership, so thank you for tuning in to the show. Thanks, Prof. Thanks, Striker. Thanks, Sponge, especially you with the face paint at the end there. I think it kind of prepped up